Then when you think of the week before that,
Kind of
that's when you
feels to
realize,
me like it
I wasn't
was,
actually
we've
at
been
work.
here for 2 weeks since the break. I don't know why it feels that way, but it does. Anyway, how are you today, City Muga?
Today, I am well.
All right?
Yes, today I'm very, very well.
Good. Good to see you, my brother.
And how are you doing, Eric?
I'm very well, thank you. I feel very well. My Excellency.
Oh, right. Sorry about that.
How are you, Nduh?
Fine, thank you.
The Honorable Nduh.
I did, Jerry.
You day?
I did, Joe.
You're buried inside the
I
clothes.
did inside clothes.
Ah, nice.
We go
nice.
see us, we go pieces something.
That's a new one. We go see us what?
We go see us, we go pieces some.
All right.
Okay, translate.
After we've gone, what happens?
We'll see us, we'll, get through this day.
We'll pursue some.
Pieces, as in break apart. Pieces.
Some.
Pieces.
Ah,
Sure you get.
okay. So one foot ahead of the other.
Certainly appropriate. Pieces, some.
We go see
Pieces,
we go pieces
Oh, it's the not some. So
Pieces,
So
So what is now?
the thing.
So it's some.
So
AM.
Lyoto is
The thing.
is a thing called Lyoto. Lyoto is our social media producer. We go see and we go pieces some.
See us, we go
Lyoto.
pieces some.
Yes.
Okay, welcome to the show. Today we are going to be having some interesting conversations. First, we will speak to a politician and we'll be asking about politicians' interests versus public interest and where is the convergence. Because a number of, for the past couple of weeks, we've been asking ourselves these questions. We see our political leaders and what they're doing and the decisions that they are making or not making and the impact that they're having on the citizens. And we were asking ourselves, so are they doing this in public interest or in personal interest? Yesterday, the Senate finally unanimously voted for a formula because they claim that they're the ones who have won some extra 50 billion shillings from the national government, something that the Council of Governors, which sits in the committee of IBEC and negotiates this, has not done for 2 years.
But somehow they were the ones.
But the senators have done in how many? 3 months? Yeah.
13 weeks.
13 weeks.
3
Okay.
months and a week, yeah.
See, they are good. These people are not jokers.
Sorry?
They do things in public interest.
Which people?
Senators. And then, in the 8 o'clock hour, yesterday we saw it in the covered in the papers. There are some active citizens of the Republic of Kenya who've gone to court and they're seeking interpretation of the court on the Constitution and what they're calling the structure of the Constitution and saying some constitutional clauses are unamendable. They stay as they are. You cannot go to Parliament. You cannot go through the popular initiative or referendum to amend some of them. Because if you do that, you're basically changing the Constitution. If you want to change the Constitution, go and overhaul the Constitution like you did in 2010. But if you want to change some parts of this Constitution, then it stops being this Constitution. So we'll be speaking to them. This is economist David Ndei and active citizen Cherotich Say. So we'll be having Day and Say. Right.
Oh, good. Fan.
But let us begin where we always begin. Dr. Mercy Mungangi
Told us yesterday that Kenya has realized 183 new cases of COVID-19.
double the number.
Yes,
Is it
double the number
double?
from the day before.
Is it double the samples?
And so what they're looking at is what they're calling a sustained decline of the cases. And it's largely attributed to the government's low testing capacity. So the national tally has increased to 36,576 since the first case was recorded in March. So unfortunately, there were 5 additional deaths yesterday, raising the death toll to 642. So 183 new cases, caseload at 36,576, and 642 deaths in the country. Still interesting, this is the fourth day in a row that she has talked about low testing capacity and what they hope to do about it in the coming weeks. She's not failed to talk about this with regularity. So it would be interesting to see now if those words or sentiments are followed up by action and the testing will increase, or with the way the country is going, it's going to be something that will be forgotten about and we move on with life. Let's wait and see. 30,348,835 coronavirus cases around the world, COVID-19 rather. 950,000 deaths, 22,038,069 having recovered. Okay. 6,874,596 cases in the United States. India now at 5,212,686. Something struck me as I was looking at these numbers earlier. And we talk about the fact that India does have such a large population. And you can imagine what it does when they're looking at the testing that they've carried out, which, by the way, is 60,565,000 tests. However, the numbers that they increase by are quite significant every day. 200,000 cases, and you would think about that. But then when you look at that vis-a-vis the number of people that are resident in the country or the population of the country, then okay, it's still under 10%. The South American countries, Central American countries continue to take a hit. South Africa increasing ever so slightly with about 2,000 cases per day, still leaving them at under 600,000 cases. Right? So, I mean, it's still increasing here and there, still looking at these numbers that they would expect. One country that seems to have taken now an additional hit is Belgium, with 2,000 cases just yesterday, whereby they had seemed to have hit a plateau and things seem to have been all right. Now there's a surge in the cases that they're realizing.
Okay.
The question, though, that has been raised in public health circles, even as we reel out these reports, are we really reeling from the same page? Let me expound on what I'm saying. When people die, they die. There's no question there. You can count the number and you figure this how they die. But in the reporting, is it when we say so many people have died? Now, this is a report that is directly related to COVID.
Yeah.
How certain are we that the culprit that has caused this death is necessarily COVID?
I think by the time that they're
Caused
giving
the death.
this, the cause of death, by the time they're giving this report, it is that there are other deaths that are occurring. However, they can't be attributed to COVID because either prior to death, they had been tested for it, or posthumously, they'd also been tested.
What I'm asking here is this. You may very well have COVID, but it may not have affected you sufficiently to kill you.
May not be the one that actually killed you.
No, I think, it's been established.
Because
that
if
there
you
are
got
other
a heart attack today and you died, collapsed, died, and then you went to hospital and posthumously you're tested and you're found to have had COVID.
Yes.
Can we then say it's COVID that killed you?
Yes, because we also know of people who have had COVID, recovered from it, and nothing untoward has happened to them.
And we also know of people who die of heart attacks and they don't have COVID.
Yes.
So how do we now know COVID caused your death?
I don't know if it's now looking at, I think when they're looking at the numbers and the way they tally, if this person died and they had COVID, it is marked as a COVID death. Now they're not. They're what they're not doing is expounding, as it were, and saying that this person now then died from complications of COVID. This person had a pre-existing condition, etc., etc.
This is where the anomaly may actually exist.
Yeah.
So that when we look at the numbers from every country and they're reporting, are they reporting the same thing?
It would be clear that different countries are
Yes,
reporting different
this is
things.
really what I'm getting at. Are they
Yeah.
reporting the same thing?
No, that's for sure.
Is there a WHO protocol?
WHO has tried to have a protocol, but WHO has long realized that this thing is tricky. In fact, this particular debate, they are the ones who actually brought it to the... They have people raised the debate, but they have also understood, and they're also now acknowledging that this particular debate is real. Okay? Should we say... Yes.
WHO has also realized that they can give out information, but each individual country with their own experiences and their acts of sovereignty are going to do what they please
Yes.
with what they find
And
out
report
as they go along.
Yes.
So it's not that you'll tell us as WHO that this is what we found, you must do this, and then we're going to stick with it. That's changed.
So there's some countries that may be recording that every person who's died had COVID-19.
Yes.
And then there's maybe some countries that are reporting that this person died as a result of COVID-19
Yes.
complications. And that changes the data.
Yes,
It would.
does.
It would.
It should.
Wow.
But anytime you have, well, we've had pandemics before, but of this nature in this day and age, no. And also, we are having this debate because information is readily available.
Yeah.
And it is easy to transmit that information, it's easy to understand and know. But uniformity, the reality is it doesn't exist, not really. You cannot say that this is uniform for everyone on the planet. It's not so.
It cannot be so.
No, it cannot be so. It actually cannot be so. What again is uniform is that there is COVID, and that COVID can cause death. That is definitely uniform. And also that COVID has actually affected the lives of, well, should we say, it has changed the public health landscape completely.
Yep.
Yes.
That is indisputable.
Yes.
Time for a break. Time for us to look at the weather and then begin looking at the newspaper headlines for this Friday morning, the 18th day of September 2020. Remember, the live stream is up, www.spicefm.co.ke and Spice FM KE on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter.
24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
As the world changes, so do we. We adapt to our situations to bring out the best in us. This is why the Standard Group and Oxford University Press East Africa have partnered to bring you Tutor Summer Online. For just 10 shillings, you have unlimited access to the reputable source of revision materials conveniently. All you have to do is log into tutorsummer.standardmedia.co.ke and make the most of the time for all students, including candidates for both primary and secondary schools. So, as we stay home, we keep dreams of future successes alive while making homeschooling an achievable reality together, effectively. Tutor Summer Online. Log in to success. A partnership between the Standard Group and the Oxford University Press East Africa.
Now what brings you out to these here parts?
I'm looking for 12 bakers who can impress. I'm looking for creativity. I'm looking for the ability to work under pressure. And I really just want to be wowed.
Ma'am, what you seek is the magnificent 12. I can help you find what you're looking for.
It's mostly cloudy in Nairobi at 14 degrees, highs of 27, and there is a chance of rain today, Eric Latiff. We'll have to wait and see what that looks like later. In Njeri, 13 degrees and mostly cloudy, highs of 24 and lows of 13. Clear skies in Nakuru this morning, highs of 26 and lows of 11. Eldoret is clear this morning as well, and there's a chance of rain later, going to highs of 23. And that rain, if it happens, will go well into the weekend. Clear skies in Kisumu at 20, highs of 25 and lows of 19. And in Kakamega, clear as well at 16 degrees, going into showers later with highs of 27 and lows of 15. Light rain showers are already happening in Mombasa at 24 degrees, will go to highs of 28, and those showers are probably going to continue well into the afternoon. It's going to be an afternoon of showers as well in Malindi, highs of 28 and lows of 24, currently mostly cloudy conditions. All right, let's take a look into Kampala, where it's partly cloudy at 19 degrees, highs of 28 and lows of 18. Dar es Salaam, partly cloudy, we're likely to see some heavy fog this morning over the town, highs of 31 and lows of 22. Joburg is clear at 13 this morning, highs of 26 and lows of 13. Partly cloudy conditions later. Very warm in Lagos at 30 degrees this morning, and it'll probably cool down later with the rains that are expected, coming down to lows of 23. Paris is clear at 16 degrees, highs of 29 and lows of 15. Those sunny conditions are likely to last throughout the day. It's also clear in London at 13, highs of 21 and lows of 12. Beijing is mostly sunny at 25, will go to highs of 27. Those sunny conditions will last throughout the day. And finally, for now, it's still Thursday night in New York, 22 degrees. It'll go to high of 24 and come down to lows of 17.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
After 6, let's start with today's proverb.
Today's proverb is very simple and straightforward. A man who is wealthy may wear an old cloth.
Okay.
Wearing an old cloth is not going to raise eyebrows. Like, he can afford a new one.
Precisely. And also, well, it can raise all sorts of interesting conversations, because if you give it, say, a sociological perspective of what would people see, the interpretations of that would be
many.
Yes, they're as varied as their personalities.
Number 1?
This guy is stingy.
Yeah, he's a miser.
Or that he understands the path towards wealth and realizes that
That is a
there's not
different
much
one.
value
Yes.
in what you wear.
He does not discard anything that
Absolutely.
they have. They utilize everything to its logical conclusion. Meaning when it's just thread,
After all.
hence the term threadbare. Or they could say, this is a man who wants to appear normal.
Yeah.
Now, an old cloth.
He's very down to earth.
Down to earth. You see, there are parts of the world where it is normal for people to change clothes with the season. Now, those of us whose season is more or less divided into two, rainy season and non-rainy season, then sun is a constant.
Yep.
Poverty is also a constant. So, wearing old clothes, so to see, is normal.
It's nothing new.
Yes, and that is why your village tailors make their money, because they will patch up your clothes for you. Yes. So it is not unusual for people to wear clothes. And it's not unusual for someone to wear the same thing for not a week, even 2 weeks.
2
Same thing.
weeks.
Yeah. Day in, day out.
It reminds me of a time when I was a young man and we would go to take a bath in the river. It was an interesting experience. There are people who would wash whatever they came with and more or less look for some boulder to sit on by the river as their clothes dried. And when the clothes dried, of course, they would then put on their
Just
clothes.
put on your clothes and go back
Carry
home.
on.
Yes. But it was an opportunity to socialize, chit-chat, even as your clothes dried.
By the river.
There were not many, just so that you understand. It was that one.
Finish where? Go. That's okay. Let's take a look at the headlines. Shall we begin with the winners versus winners and the new formula?
What's that?
So, after the meeting in State House the day before yesterday, it was 2 days before yesterday, wasn't it? In which the president pledged that the national government will try as much as possible to have a 50 billion shilling increase in county allocation from the next financial year. The team that had been selected by the Senate to go and thrash out a formula emerged and said, "Abemus papam."
Wow.
And white smoke. And basically they announced that now they have agreed, and there's this formula that's going to work, and the formula will ensure that no county loses money, because that was the main bone of contention. So counties are going to receive exactly what they received in the last financial year. And even going forward, counties will be receiving based on what they were receiving in the last financial year, and then formula. So that's how the formula is going to be applied.
And this has taken 10 sittings to arrive at.
Yeah.
13.
Yep. Because it took that long for the national government to make this pledge.
Oh, that's what they were waiting for.
Show a way out. See, all the other formulas are trying to look at, okay, so what do we do with these 316 billion shillings? We don't even know whether next year it could be less. We don't even know whether next year it could still be the same, or it could be more. Remember the first amendment by the Senate committee was saying, let's apply. Then there were those amendments by Irungo Kangata and the others saying, let this formula come into effect, but it shall begin 2 years from now, after we are done with our term of office in the Senate. Others were coming to say, let's set a base, like the nominated senator whose formula was, let's set a base of, say, 278 billion shillings is where everybody receives what they were receiving up to that 278 billion shillings, and then we start applying the formula.
Right.
But now with this 50, we have gainers and gainers, and the nation has done some tabulation of the big gainers and the top league gainers and the low league gainers. Nairobi is the toppest of the top league gainers, which is getting an extra 3-point-something billion shillings from 15.9 billion. This is what they could have received with the second generation formula. But now, with the third generation formula, they received 19.2 billion shillings. Nakuru from 10 billion to 13 billion. Kiambu, 9 to 11. Turkana, 10 to 12. Kakamega, 10 to 12 as well. The low league gainers include Tharaka-Nithi, Nyamira, Vihiga, Isiolo, Kwale, and the others. So they say everybody is a winner. And they came out to thump their chests and said, this is
so
as a result
nice.
of... It was not in vain.
No,
It wasn't in vain. Our back and forth was not in vain. We stood for the people.
They did. Yes, and do as you put it, 13
13 sessions is all it took.
Essentially, they arm twisted the government.
One could see it that way.
There is no other way of seeing it.
It's interesting that what it took is for government to shut down, essentially. Counties to say they're going to shut down. And then, less than 24 hours later, you suddenly have an agreement. What stopped you from doing this before?
Remember that even before this stalemate, as we have called it, we had situations where, yes, money was allocated. Yes, the counties could draw it, but they didn't draw it because they couldn't draw it. It's not something that is new. Now, the argument has been also that, well, there are certain conditions. In the days of structural adjustment program, it was conditionalities. I found that word interesting. But there are certain conditions that must be met before you can actually access the money.
Yeah.
Right.
There is no time in the history of this country that this money that is supposed to be part and parcel of enacting devolution has not had issues. So now what we're saying... Yes, every year. So what we're saying is, I think they looked at it and said, look, we have to put this thing, this thing has come
to an end. It's ridiculous.
Yes. We have to have a platform from which we now function and we move forward. But it must be agreed upon so that it's not just a statement, it is enshrined in something a little more concrete that even past our tenure, it can be applied. But having said that...
All that can emerge now, but were we seeing that before? I'm still skeptical.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Eric. And I was saying, I remember I began by having said that. Having said that, are we telling ourselves that this is something that they could not have seen, could not have arrived at, that it required 13 sessions for them to arrive at this?
It did require all this drama.
Yes, that is the question.
Was it necessary to go through this teeth-pulling exercise for the amount of time that we went through?
Oh, the DCI is chasing some people. Oh, there's some people who are doing the other. Was it absolutely necessary?
Cops and robbers across county, across the country, coming back, hide and seek, musical chairs, and then 24 hours, in 24 hours, voila.
What
There's
I'd
an
really like to
agreement.
know is what they were told or what they actually agreed on.
Right.
Really, not this.
The true picture.
Yeah, this is the outcome.
The true story.
Yes, that I would really like to know.
You know, if we were saying that they had, from the very beginning, said the national government must increase the revenue allocation,
Yes.
and then now we say because the national government has increased the revenue allocation, here is a formula. We have won. Then you can say this was a game plan all along. But it was never clear. They were just saying, this formula will not work. Oh, people cannot be, we cannot be funding trees. Oh, you cannot call us trees.
Do you remember the underbelly of the Senate that was exposed to us with the arguments that were being brought forth? And you wondered, wait. What exactly are we discussing here? People took the fights that they'd had in other forums and brought
them.
Yes.
Right, yeah. Pop.
And then the divisions that exist in our country with political parties also played out nicely on the floor of the House.
Yep.
So it was a question of not what someone is saying, but what the party that this person or the interest that this person is aligned
Is
to.
aligned to. Very true.
So something that could even have been accepted.
Could have been, and I would be very interested, but you probably see that this agreement is probably something that was floated 13 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, but everybody was up in arms and was refusing. But this is something that probably could have been floated before. Like you say, this is just an outcome. But
If you're a senator who
ongoing-
wants to be a governor, surely you want to ensure, should that happen, that the money that you have for running the county is a substantial amount.
Substantial, yes.
It makes sense. But then, of course, we'll say it's for the people. It is for the people. So the people should be happy now.
The people should be very, very, very happy. Should look back at their senators and really thank them.
And be grateful for the senators having done what they're paid to do.
Yep.
okay.
28 minutes after 6. Let's take a break, take a look at the traffic, and then we look at other headlines in the papers. Good morning. This is a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. CT Muga, Nduh Okoh, Eric Latiff, Isaiah Ombura, listening in from Mombasa CBD. Simon Villa says Ole Kasasi is tuned in. Taita Zombeta in Kisii. Henry Lisuta listening in from Darajani, Kibra Slums. Karibuni nyinyi nyote kwenye kipindi cha leo.
traffic.
Okay, it's a Friday morning and already things are looking hunky-dory. And nothing much happening on Mombasa Road at the moment. Trying to get out will not be too much of a headache right now. But likely to increase in terms of traffic later on. That one we're going to have to keep an eye on, no? Because the expressway works have not stopped. That will continue. If we look at other parts of the city, coming out of Jogo Road, getting to the City Stadium roundabout, for now, it looks like it's not too terrible. But we also know that the roads are being worked on in industrial area, so that will affect traffic. It is Friday, and even though it's now crawling along, it may become jam-packed in a short while. So plan ahead of time. Coming off of Thika Road, there's some traffic outbound. It is Friday, so that we understand as well. We'll take a look at what's going out of the city now, off of Wayaki Way, and then headed towards Limuru. Everything looks good for now, guys, but let's wait half an hour or so. We'll see what it looks like then. So if you haven't left yet, now might be a good time to do so before you get stuck anywhere. If you do get stuck anywhere, please let us know. Spice FM KE on Twitter.
Spice FM, Malindi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
27 minutes.
Mornings
Other
done
headlines.
right.
Before we do that, let's appreciate Mahmoud Hassan Ali, who's watching from Mandera. Good morning, Mahmoud.
Karibu sana, Mahmoud.
Well done.
All right, another headline.
1.1 billion. What do you think I'm talking about? Boost to schools reopening plan. There was a grant by the Global Partnership for Education to be dispersed and spent under the supervision of the World Bank. The government has received 1.1 billion shillings towards preparations for school reopening. It was a grant by the GPE which will help facilitate smooth transition in the return to school plans for targeted vulnerable students. Of the money, 365 million will go towards supporting access and delivery of online content to all students in basic education. All students. 365 million shillings towards supporting access and delivery of online content to all students in basic education. Another 200 million will go towards supporting training of teachers in online and distance learning to support remote learning, while 300 million will be used to facilitate smooth transition back to school for vulnerable girls. So this is interesting because there's still the aspect of remote learning, online learning that is being funded here. And there's still talk of schools opening. And even when they do open, some money will then go towards those vulnerable students who need some help. So it still looks as if the remote or online learning is still a thing, still taking place. The funding comes as the government puts in place measures to allow safe return to schools. Some of the measures that require funding include creating additional spaces to cater for social distancing when schools reopen, erecting hand washing points and the purchase of face masks and sanitizers, also require huge budgetary allocations. Overall, students previously enrolled in preschool, primary and secondary schools will benefit from this funding. So the Teacher Service Commission, Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development, and the Kenya National Examination Council will also benefit from the funds dispersed by the Ministry of Education and supervised by the World Bank. It's interesting there that we're insisting on the supervision by the World Bank to make sure that the money actually goes where it is supposed to go.
Oh, the first time the World
So the
Bank has
funding-
supervised the project. And anyway, go on.
The funding is spread between July this year and December next year.
Okay. So it's basically just building our capacity so that in the event of future, we shall always have online learning taking place.
Absolutely.
That's a good thing. In the meantime, as we prepare to reopen schools, Magoha says we need 26 million masks for learners. These masks are going to be made by Rivertex East Africa. Children from vulnerable backgrounds will get them for free. Other children will buy at 35 shillings a piece.
Okay. And you need to wear one every day as going to school, right?
You need to have a mask every day.
You're not going to be wearing the same mask every day.
No.
If it's those ones.
I guess from previous things that Magoha said, they are targeting at having at least 2 masks per learner. That brings us to what, 26?
These are reusable masks?
That's what. Yeah.
Yep.
That's what they're saying.
The reusable masks.
And they will give the specifics of what is in this mask that
Yep.
makes it.
Yep. The specifics are, I'm sure, according to the standards also recorded by KEBS, and this is what will be given to Rivertex and told, produce this.
Okay.
In the meantime, well, as that huku hayo ya kijiri, the president yesterday, and accompanied by Interior CS Fred Matiang'i and of course Education Minister George Magoha, they went to workshops in Nairobi that have been given the tender to produce desks at a cost of 1.9 billion shillings. And the government was explaining how it arrived at the cost of the desks, chairs and lockers to be supplied to primary and secondary schools amid concerns of overpricing by carpenters. The president says the government plans to pay 3,800 for a secondary school locker and chair. And this is following extensive market survey. The cost of primary school desks have now been fixed at 2,500 and 3,800 for secondary locker and chair. The prototypes for the desks and chairs have already been made public by the Education CS. And we are now looking at the number of lockers and chairs a secondary school will get 50. The number of desks a primary school is expected to be supplied with 70. 2,500 cost of making a primary school desk. 3,800 secondary school desk, 360,000 number of desks to be supplied to primary schools, 622, 357 desks and chairs to go to secondary schools. So each primary school is going to get 50 lockers and a chair. Primary. 70 desks to primary schools and 50 lockers and chairs for secondary schools across the country.
All right.
They're already being made. Remember, this is part of the government stimulus package. Yeah?
Yes.
So instead of saying how else do we support local industry, just say we are going to spend this amount of money to purchase these desks, which will then be used in schools.
Okay.
Question, of course, is hey, how much? 3,800 for a desk.
Per desk. Okay.
But wasn't there discussion about the material that also is supposed to be used for these desks?
The prototype has already been released. This is what you use. This is
Follow this. We'll
And
pay.
These are
remember,
the
there was the discussion that
specifications.
since it wasn't wood per se, there were people who argued that they live in areas that are prone to
national disasters.
It's that day. Don't worry. Just go.
actually,
They are national.
They are national, but they are natural as well as being national disasters.
Eh.
And they said that how do they know that this material would be resistant to some of those vagaries of the climate? Well, is this a wait and see moment?
It's a
It
wait
is a
and
wait
see.
and see moment.
It's one of those. Maybe it's one of those that you actually even now say, should this have been devolved, go and support carpenters from across the country and say, in this area, this is what you guys have been making desks for.
But I thought that's what they were.
It is, right?
What
But you
they're
see, there are
doing.
specifications of this is how it shall look like.
Yes. Now, unfortunately, why you see why I'm having this discussion? The MES began in the same manner. You see,
There are specifications, and this is what you need.
this is what you need. Thank you. As opposed to, is it possible to produce these desks for this price at this level?
Yep.
Because there are places where, by virtue of the materials that are available locally, they are able to produce those very, very same desks. Okay.
Cheaper.
Yes, even cheaper than that.
If you went to village level, if you went to basically sub-county level,
Yes,
schools procure desks
they do.
from local carpenters.
They do.
Right?
They do.
And this is how they make the desks and they come into the school. So if you just went and said, we have education inspectors across the country, and those education inspectors ensure that the standards are the same.
In their area.
So
yeah.
if that desk has already been approved by the local education inspectors as it serves the purpose, then why not just go to the local carpenter
what
and
you're
tell
saying,
them,
Eric?
do what you've been doing. Now supply 10 to this school, and this is the money.
The wheel is being reinvented here. What you've just discussed, what you just said, has been happening for the longest time. And if you're talking about furniture in local schools, they are actually manufactured by locals
By locals. Just
for the longest time. Now, I can understand the government's involvement and I can understand their push for what they're doing, but I wonder I wonder. The ghost of the MES has not quite left me.
No, it's still still front
It's
and
still
center.
lingering and not in the too distant background. And so it starts off with something that is well-intentioned.
Well intentioned, but then
And then-
at the end of the day, it's due diligence, because now you have. You're right, CT. Because then, are you going to end up? You could do this thing. Are you going to end up with desks in particular county that may actually not work out a particular area? The same way you had equipment, medical equipment in certain counties. You had kidney machines, for example, in Laikipia. You don't need them. What you actually need is heart machines. You see.
What you probably also need is a machine and the requisite appliances that enable you to test blood, for instance.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yep.
So instead of transporting the blood for testing, God knows how many hundreds of kilometers,
You can do it right there.
Yes. Now, I am worried because I'm even thinking, who came up with this idea that this particular material that is being touted as being useful must be the
one.
material
Be
that
the
must
one.
be used? In the same way, when we had MES...
We may actually come up and say that, we're trying to upgrade, that this is better material or this,
Explain
this
why
and the
it's
other.
better.
Okay.
It is waterproof. It is
all those
oil-proof.
things.
All weather.
And it lasts longer,
Yes.
whatever.
Yes.
The issue here would be if a school, because every secondary school is going to get how many? Every secondary school is going to get 50 lockers and chairs. So you have this entire school that has 1,000 lockers and chairs, and then there's a new 50 that look a bit different. And this new 50, how are we going to sustain getting others that look like this? It's a point.
Actually, that's a valid one, because once the government has stopped the support and this is now the standard that
We
has
go
been
back
set,
to the local guy.
what's going to happen?
Exactly.
When you're talking about stimulus projects and initiatives, this is definitely one of them.
Yeah.
And it would have been even more stimulus and more stimulating to the locals if it was actually given to the locals.
them.
It isn't as
Absolutely.
though the local areas don't know who can do these things. They know. They know.
And that's how you support their needs.
That's how
Yes,
you support
and
them.
In fact, you should just the same way we were talking about food and food distribution. The government came to this realization 20 years after everybody else had realized that it's better to send money to the people than they buy locally. What they know what they need, and you're supporting that local economy because they're going to buy from their neighbors.
You see, the unfortunate thing is that with the history of these things that we've had, the idea to assist and alleviate poverty and ensure that we have good governance, our problem is this. Our history doesn't lend itself to a very trusting process.
Yeah.
It doesn't. Because every time this comes up, you say, okay, this sort of thinking has been with us before. And
Yeah.
the end result was not what we purposed.
Exactly.
Yep.
Talk.
So shall we take a break and then you come and tell us how Raila wants to flatten the curve?
Yes. Or somebody wants to flatten something.
Hey, so as we're all flattening the curve, Raila is now flattening the curve as well. It's 7:15. This is a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Let's take a break.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise.
You're listening to Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
All right. Sister Nduh.
So, ODM party leader, or rather, let's just talk about ODM first. They're working on a strategy to counter Deputy President William Ruto's spirited presidential campaigns ahead of the 2022 general election. So right now, they're in the kitchen. Ruto has been crisscrossing the country from Kitengela to Kisii, spreading the anti-referendum agenda and championing his presidential bid. Many would say it's not campaigning, but okay. Initially, he was riding on launching government projects until that was taken away from him through an executive order. He then engaged a full-blown campaign mode, provoking a fallout in the Jubilee Party, which saw his allies kicked out of House leadership positions. After a lull triggered by COVID-19 pandemic, the DP surged back a few weeks ago, hosting political and religious delegations, touring regions and hitting hard through media campaigns. Now, in response, ODM is planning Meet the People tours, COVID be damned, unveiling of the handshake report and coining the Time for Change slogan to keep up with the election campaigns that have started in earnest. So this is how now ODM plans to flatten the Ruto curve. Last week, Raila visited Coast to reassure his support base. His Orange Party is also beginning to look inwards to make amends and draw new allies. According to the chairman, John Mbadi, the party will not give room for Ruto to overtake them in the presidential race ahead of 2022. So as you do, so do we, is essentially what we're looking at here. John Mbadi says, and I quote, Raila was our presidential candidate in 2017, and we have not picked another person. He is still the best bet. We shall do all we can to support him for the presidency.
Okay.
What I find interesting, you see, a strategy, a political strategy, is very much akin to a war strategy. Do you actually have a strategy and then air it
Just
out
go
for
and
the-
tell
for the
everybody what you
whole
want to
world
do.
to know what it is that you're planning?
This is what we're going to do.
We shall attack you from this side.
We're
We
coming
shall
from
launch
this
a
side, and
dawn.
we're coming with so many people.
And we have many, and they're all armed
To the
in the
teeth.
triplicate.
Yes, and others are coming from this particular area. So be warned, we are not going to take whatever you have done lying down. We are standing up, as you can see, and we are marching in your direction. Really?
Yeah. It actually just takes me back to the Iraq invasion. Remember the American soldiers and the President George W. Bush and how they were talking. You know, it's going to be shock and awe. That was actually
And
the
you're
word
telling
for that.
everybody.
It was shock and awe. And then there was was it the defense spokesman, the defense ministry spokesman or defense minister from Iraq? And this guy used to really come up and hit back at America. Let them come.
Let them come. What are they
We
looking
shall
for?
send them across the desert. Tell them to come. We are waiting.
We're waiting.
And you know,
People of Iraq
see,
are
they
ready.
came. And did they actually ever leave?
Not alive.
Across the desert. Well, some crawled, but not all.
Not all.
What I actually think is this. The strategy is to mislead.
Yep.
For sure. There's no way you're going to show your hand. You're going to play your cards close to your chest, especially in light of what may have happened in the past. Anybody would be stupid to show their hand now.
I wouldn't take that particular statement to the bank. Not where politicians are concerned. Or politicians do some of the strangest, weirdest things and which defy any sense of logic that you may think they ought to have.
Looking at what ODM is said to have gone through, especially with Raila at the point where he wanted to be president several times in succession, it is highly unlikely that they would show their hand in terms of what they wanted to do. Highly unlikely.
Let me ask you, not very long ago, we had a problem in Migori, which hasn't gone away.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What did the ODM party decide?
They want to remove the governor.
Yes. I trust that they have, and I believe they have the prerogative to do so. But the timing and everything to do with it, what do you think the interpretation, the general interpretation was? And look at the stalemate. There's a stalemate there. Whatever was planned for has actually not been achieved as we speak right now.
Yep.
Yes. Meaning there's been pushback.
Yep.
They stated it and they did it. Now there's pushback. And there was reporting in the papers that the top brass of the ODM party had camped in Migori. And what are the results? Pushback.
Proper.
Yes. So what does that tell you? They stated what they wanted to do. They tried to enact it. Or maybe the Meet the People tour has begun in Migori.
Maybe this is it.
Yes.
Maybe that was it.
This is where to flatten the curve.
Yes.
Start with
But-
It has
Migori.
already started.
But even as I say all these things, what I think is that ODM knows exactly what they want to do. All these things are just for our entertainment. And for
Telling-
us
they're
to
not
read
going
and
to tell
figure
you.
out. Yes.
Yeah. They know what they want to do. These things that you, but chew on that, chew on that bone, while we keep the meat back here.
Yeah.
Okey-dokey.
The U.S. Congress has been investigating the plane crashes by the American manufacturer Boeing. And after an 18-month investigation, they have basically said that the manufacturer is at fault. And this then gives power to the kin of those who lost their loved ones in the Ethiopian plane crash and the one in Indonesia. Some reprieve and a way now to seek compensation for billions of shillings. The report says the 737 MAX crashes were not the result of a singular failure or a technical mistake or a mismanaged event. They were the horrific culmination of a series of faulty technical assumptions by Boeing's engineers, a lack of transparency on the part of Boeing's management, and grossly insufficient oversight by the Federal Aviation Authority. The pernicious result of regulatory capture on the part of the FAA with respect to its responsibilities to perform robust oversight of Boeing and to ensure the safety of the flying public. Damning, isn't it? It basically says the regulator was captured by the industry. So the regulator is told, no, this is fine. They're like, okay, why do we sign?
Go ahead.
If you recall,
Approved.
even long before these disasters occurred and they had to recall that particular model,
Yep.
the pilots and the associations had raised concerns. It was not, they had said, look, there seems to be an issue here. Okay? And the issue always was when they put the plane on autopilot.
Yep.
Then there was a problem with the software.
Yes, it auto-dove.
Yeah.
Yep. So the 737 MAX contained a new feature in its flight control computer, the Maneuvering Characteristic Augmentation System, MCAS. The new system had the ability to trigger non-pilot commanded flight control movements that could place the airplane into a dangerous nose-down attitude that challenged the pilot's ability to control the aircraft. And the engineers knew this, but the engineers were not taking action. And the management specifically was saying, and it's okay, we've got to be in the lead, and this is our best performing, and people are really buying this plane. Let's move on. Okay. It has resulted.
It was a wonderful plane, except for that one kink.
Yeah. And the
that
one
one
thing is
kink
what
was
would
just
bring
the
it down,
Yeah.
essentially.
It's the worst.
Yeah.
It's the worst.
Okay. So, I lost it, but there was something.
You will
You
find it.
had it.
I did, man. And then it has disappeared.
Take a minute, take a moment.
I'll get it eventually.
You will.
I will.
See, you've got it.
So, in county news, just something that was a bit interesting, and I have lost it again. What's
Don't
wrong
worry,
with
you
me?
will find it.
It's gone.
It's gone, man.
Oh my goodness.
Gone from the pages that they were previously in, or gone from your mind?
No, it's in my mind. And I looked at it specifically. Aha, voila. So, virtual court cases jolted by confusion. And this is looking specifically at Naivasha County. This is very interesting. Robbery with violent suspect Peter Kamau Ngige walked out of Naivasha Maximum Security Prison a free man in June following a mix-up of names during a court process. Ngige shared names with another person arrested for an alcohol-related offense. Since then, police officers have been searching for Ngige with little success. At the trial, he posed as the liquor suspect, with prison officers seemingly unaware of his tricks. According to the prison department, during the video conferencing proceedings, the man on robbery charges posed as the illicit alcohol remandee, deceitfully gaining freedom. Since Since Kenya confirmed its first coronavirus case in March, court users have experienced numerous challenges when applying technology, especially in the virtual proceedings.
I'm not understanding the story.
So there's two guys. They have the same name, Peter Kamau Ngige. All right?
And they're in the same remand facility.
Yes, one is on robbery with violence. Another one is on liquor charges. Okay? Because some liquor offense. So what happened? That's why it says seemingly unbeknownst to the prison wardens. Okay? He came and posed, because your name is Peter, right?
Peter Ngige. Kuja.
He came, he's robbery with violence, but he comes and he poses as the liquor fellow.
Guy.
Judge says, okay, that's
Guilty,
pay,
yes.
fine, go.
Oh, Your Honor.
Out. After some time, Peter Ngige is wondering, wait a minute,
Where is my case?
why am I still here? Judge says, you,
And who are you?
robbery with violence. Are you not the one? This is the file. Here we are. No! I was arrested outside such bar, such an hour. I don't understand why people are talking about robbery with violence. That's when they realized, okay, it's not him. That other guy walked out in June.
But how do we
now
know?
we are looking
how
for
do we
him.
know that the liquor guy actually did walk out, and that this guy?
The liquor guy
How
didn't
do we
walk
know,
out.
how
It's
do
the
we know
robbery guy
the
that-
true identity of
Yes.
any of
So
these
now
people?
you're saying that the liquor guy could actually be the robbery guy, could actually be the liquor guy.
You've got it. That's what I'm saying. How do we know? Because if something as basic as identification is at the core of this discussion, then how do we know?
We
Keep asking the question. How do we
ID
actually
number
know?
logged in.
Yeah,
So,
logged in at the
arrested,
time of arrest.
you're in this.
certain
So and so
details
ID
that they
number,
took.
this and the other.
Fingerprints.
Fingerprints taken.
Yeah.
It seems, and are you telling me that when they call you, they go through this process again?
No.
No, they just call you
Then-
CT.
Yes.
You say
CT.
yes. Come
Yes.
here.
Look,
Twende,
if this is
kesi yako
my
ni leo.
file, Eric, think for a moment. This is my file with my details. Robbery with violence. And this is your file, and you're now called CT. And all you've been doing is just getting drunk carelessly. All right?
So you can imagine now that
If
guy
that
saw
piece
here.
of paper, because this is not digital, on which the charge sheet, all I need to do is transfer this here and put this here.
You would think.
And
but,
we've
this
yeah.
virtual
And we've changed identity.
Yep.
Yes, now. And now this virtual court has made it even worse because who are they seeing? Through the screen.
Actually, what City has raised is a very big issue because it can actually have been played even by the prison's officers.
That's what they said.
Swap the
Seemingly
files.
unknown, seemingly quote unquote. Somebody knew what was going on.
If you
for
swap
sure.
the files, the same person, I just pick your Nduh Okoh and this is another Nduh Okoh. I just swap.
swap.
Yes.
And it's the same
Your
name.
your name, your ID, your everything now goes into the robbery with violence case.
Yes.
You shall never come out and tell me, but me, I was arrested for.
I said, no.
Boss.
File. This is the file.
Is this your name?
Yes. They
this your
don't
ID now?
attach your picture to that particular file.
No, they don't.
Remember, we had a case when the former President Kibaki was president, and he was walking into Parliament. There's a guy in a lovely pinstripe suit.
Who followed him?
Yes. Full glare of the camera. That's how I know the story. Kibaki sat down. He also sat down.
I'm wondering.
Who is this person? So the question you want to ask is, when the president is walking into Parliament, don't you know whom he should be walking with?
He just allows a random fellow
Yes.
to walk alongside him.
Lovely suit he was wearing. Walked with a with very serious grace and demeanor. Like that is where he ought to be.
To be.
Yes.
All right, it's 7 o'clock. Let's take a look at what's happening on the roads.
Spice FM, Nakuru.
Still looking good in most parts of the city this morning. Nobody's walking along in a pinstripe suit along Mombasa Road, that's for sure. It's looking good as you get to the Nyayo Stadium roundabout, and not too much traffic then along Uhuru Highway. Seems that there are less people on the roads today, but still we expect to see that clog up in a short while. Outbound on Thika Road is where we have some problems. That heading now towards the Thika exit that it has built up, but it won't be too bad getting into the CBD, not at least at this hour. We'll see what it looks like in a short while. So hopefully it will be an easy Friday morning on the roads, but don't hold me to that. I have not promised. Let's wait and see what it looks like. Let us know if you get stuck somewhere. If you find a route where nobody is,
Tell us about Mbagathi. What happened?
where?
The man's crossing the road.
You want to know what happened?
With his bouquet.
So now
Wreath,
there was a guy crossing with flowers, unfortunately, at the roundabout at City Mortuary, okay? And the cop stops him and says, I don't even say it in Swahili.
No, just English.
Wewe, unataka kugongwa na hizi maua zako utakuweka. tutakuwekelea maua.
Yes, it may, we shouldn't be laughing. No, of course we should.
So cop says, wewe unapita hapa unataka kugonga na hizo maua zako tukuwekelee.
Yes, exactly.
Oh my goodness.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Nduh Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up,
You're saying
not down.
laugh, but also it's not really a laughing matter on that.
Actually, no. Look, let me ask, for instance, when you see a picture or there's TV and there are police chasing people, what is your first reaction? Oh, that poor man is being chased. Or is the funny bone in your body tickled?
Well, it depends on how it's...
The way it was put by this
There's
cop,
some instances where you actually look and you laugh. If the guy is managing to dodge the cop,
Yes.
just like doing like a hare being chased by...
It's funny.
It's funny.
You see, again, it's dark humor. And even when you see, for instance, all right, why, for instance, do you think human beings love watching people fighting? People have an argument, blows are thrown, especially if they're drunk. First blow, miss, and they follow the blow to the ground. And then the other fellow maybe tries to kick him on the ground, misses. Again on the ground.
On the ground.
Humor.
Entertainment.
There's something in us human beings that we find the bizarre funny. We even find the tragic funny.
Yeah.
Yes, anyway.
Today's proverb.
A man who is wealthy may wear an old cloth. May. Not must. May.
Operative word here is may. And basically saying, you may choose to. There'll be no issue.
None, even if you want to wear it every single day.
It's okay.
It is fine. There's something that comes to mind when I'm thinking of humor and I'm thinking of clothes. For the longest time in many Christian circles, it was considered taboo for women to wear trousers. And they would even quote the Bible. Should we say they actually misquoted the Bible. And people believed it to be true.
Yeah.
And they held it to be sacrosanct. Now, why I'm bringing this thing up, our proverb today actually leans towards perceptions more than anything else. And if you twist it and turn it to the political dimension that we in Kenya live in, then let me say you are in for some very interesting information. That could even be humorous.
Hey. Anyway, so we will be having a conversation with the Njeri Thorne MP Njeri Okoh shortly as he joins us on the line. But there's still a lot that is happening and has been covered in the papers. For example, The Nation, page 2. Is it page 2? That is page 3. That is giving the story. Remember, there was an inquest and the court came up with the report and said, no, there was no foul play in the death of the former minister, yes, Mutula Kilonzo, and Makueni senator, right? So today it's looking at why court ruled out homicide in Mutula death. The family led by Mutula Kilonzo Jr. has been saying, no, there was foul play. And then there was massive cover-up in this. And that's what they were saying at the inquest. Now, the story here says gives the information that was taken to court, and what they're saying led to the judge saying, I actually don't see any foul play. Here looks like a man who went home in the evening. Somebody went and bought a kilo of meat at a nearby butchery. He came, he took some antihistamine, and this antihistamine is known to have very strong reaction. And then he took an antihistamine and what else? Some energy drink. And this combination is likely to have led to his death. No foul play at all detected. Not in how he had spent his day, not in the manner in which he died, not in the way his body was found, nothing. That really leads us to think that there was foul play. This closes the chapter.
But I consider this again is something that seems to be ingrained in our minds. People don't just die. And if they're in positions of leadership, if they're in positions of prominent leadership, then they certainly just don't die. There must be something untoward attributed to their passing away. Again, perception. It's a perception that our people have. It's like, how could he die? It's not possible for him to die. Yet we all know we must die.
At some point.
It is a surety of life.
Yes.
We must end there sometime, somewhere.
And reason will be found to support those views because he took this position, he offended such and such a person, he offended the government. Usually something will be found to justify that particular perspective.
Yep. He was Justice Minister in the Grand Coalition.
Then
At this time, there were investigations into what had happened in 2008. All manner of speculation comes up.
if someone, say for instance, represents the opposition wing in the country, then they certainly cannot just die. The government will be blamed for everything.
For everything.
Yes. Even if there's no government, he'll have political enemies. I mean, and the list just goes on and on and on.
Anyway, so we've been talking the last couple of days about our political leaders and questioning these guys. Do they have Wajiko at heart? When we see the government borrowing money left, right, and center, we had a conversation early in the week about national debt. The other day, the Business Daily headline was looking at how much the country has borrowed in the last 7 years. You know, over 5 trillion shillings within the last 7 years alone, right? And where our debt is right now. And then you ask yourself, so where has this money gone? Has it actually gone to bear fruit? Where are the citizens' watchdogs? The citizen watchdogs are Parliament. Where has Parliament been as this happens? We see the Parliamentary Budget Office report coming out, for example, on some of these projects that have been initiated by the government. Say, for instance, the big projects in the manufacturing part of the Big Four agenda. We're looking at the Kenani leather factory. We're looking at the Dongo Kundu Industrial Park, the Naivasha Industrial Park as well. And the Parliamentary Budget Office saying some of these projects, money comes, the budget is brought to Parliament. Money has been allocated to this particular project. The relevant committees look and they approve. The entire Parliament approves this budget. Money is not appropriated into this particular project. Supplementary budget a couple of months later is brought from the Treasury, and that money has then now been moved from the initial intended purpose. So you end up having a project on paper, but on the ground, this project is not getting funding. Where have the members of Parliament been? Look at the fight against COVID-19 and what we've raised questions here about where has the money come from? Where has the money gone? Do we need to have an audit of the decision-making process? Look at the KEMSA scandal right now, and very many others. Floods and the ravages of floods across the country, and what floods have killed more people than COVID-19 this year. But where are our elected representatives? Do they think about that? What do we hear about from them? Oh, now it's about BBR, it's about Tanga Tanga, it's about Kieleweke. Politicians' personal interest versus public interest. What comes where?
Actually, it's political interest versus political interest. At what point does the common monarchy actually feature?
In any of these interests?
No, it's their interest versus their other interests. And then just when you think that when the Mwananchi may come into the discussion, some other political interest comes into the discussion.
And the irony of all of this is that political leaders are actually there to represent the best interests of the people. That's the irony in all of it. But then they are the forgotten factor in most cases when it comes to the discourse that we hear then between political leaders, that people, individuals, Kenya, Wananchi, Wanjiko, are forgotten.
The discussion actually got to a point. It's like it went through an evolutionary process and arrived at maturation that so long as you represent the people, your interest has to be the interest of the people. Yes. Just by extension of the fact, but by virtue of the fact that you are the leader, the chosen leader, you represent the people. Irrespective of how ridiculous the particular notion under discussion may be, but you still represent
the people.
Yes.
Let's bring in one of the people's representatives, and this is the Njeri Thorne MP, Njeri Okoh. Good morning, sir. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning, Eric. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Welcome to the Situation Room. My colleagues Nduh Okoh and CT Muga say hello to you.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Njeri, we are today discussing what CT is saying, political interest versus political interest, or let's just say politicians' interest versus public interest. And it's born out of what we've been discussing the last couple of months, looking at what's happening to the people on the ground, looking at what politicians are focusing as their main discussion at in their platforms. So, for instance, COVID-19 has come. Many people have lost their jobs, many have lost their livelihoods, many have closed businesses, many have had to really change their lifestyles because of the impact of COVID-19 on the economy, on their lives. What do we hear from politicians? Not about that impact, really, but about other things that are happening in the country. It's about insulting people's mothers. It's about talking about what we're going to do with BBI come the next few days. It's about how we're going to flatten each other's curves come 2022. It's about how we are not going to allow this county lose, or we are not going to allow this group of people win. Where does that feature in what you are elected to do, which is represent the people and have the people's best interests at heart?
Eric, I think the first thing we need to understand is that politicians are in office because they have been put in office by the public. And the reason, so a lot of the things, I'm sorry, let me get that. Let me start all over again.
Please.
You've talked about politicians' interest versus public interest, for example.
Yep.
It's an interesting statement, but it's actually very theoretical, in my opinion, because the reason politicians are in office is because the members of the public put them there. The most important thing to a politician is to stay in office. And to stay in office, you have to have the public support to stay in office. So anything you do is driven by what you think is in public interest. Because you need the public to actually keep you in office. You need the public behind you. You need the public supporting you. A lot of the times I see people complaining about what politicians are doing. Politicians are some of the people with the greatest pulse on public, on what is popular to the public. So if you have a politician doing something, it is because he actually thinks there's a certain group or a certain sector of the public that is going to support him to do it. For example, you've seen people insulting others. As those people insult others, as those politicians insult other politicians, there are members of the public around that politician clapping for him. Because this is what the politician thinks these people actually want him to be doing. So when the conversation about what is in public interest versus what is in politicians' interest, politicians actually very rarely have interests. Their interests are driven by what they think their public or whoever they represent, whoever they represent is interested in.
So they play to the gallery.
They always play to the gallery, unfortunately, or most politicians play to the gallery. So if you see a politician, for example, pushing the issue of the conversation of the BBI, it's because there's a certain interest group that he represents that is interested in that particular topic or that particular issue. So the reason why you have such a disconnect, especially between people who analyze politicians and the politicians themselves, is because politicians, like I'm an elected member of parliament from Njeri. My work is to keep trying to figure out what do the Njeri people want me to do or say. If I'm an elected member of parliament from Nandi, for example, or from Rift Valley at this moment in time, I'll be doing what I think my public wants me to do, which is to fight for William Ruto. Because William Ruto looks like he's been fought by the government. So I would be fighting back against the government because I want to make my public happy with me, because right now the grief that they have is that our leader, who is William Ruto, has been fought. If I come from Central Province, or if I come from Nyanza, for example, I'd be doing what the public wants me to do, because at this moment in time, the public wants me to support Raila Odinga, to support the government. So the one person who has a pulse, or a finger on the pulse of their public, is a politician. Because you can't be a successful politician and be disconnected from your public. You'll go home very quickly.
Mheshimiwa, thank you. I like the thread and then the trend of your argument, but let me ask this question. Are we to say, therefore, that leadership has to do primarily with doing what people want? Or, if I may ask, does it have to do with what you know you ought to do that will eventually help people with a long-term view?
Let's first start by a distinction. Not every politician is a leader. Because, again, that's another mistake I see us making. We assume that because somebody has gotten elected, that they automatically have become leaders. People get elected because they're popular, not because they're leaders. Now, hopefully, some of the people who get elected are actually leaders. Are we together?
Okay.
Because remember,
so
when people are running for office,
so let's go back to that point of the election.
Voted.
When people are going to vote, are they going to vote for leaders or are they going to vote for politicians? What is the purpose of voting?
No. Actually, people vote for people who are popular. The problem about the problem in our politics is that we haven't actually defined why we vote people. I had a recent conversation. Let me just use an example.
Are you saying that the people of Njeri don't know why they voted you in, Mr. Njeri? If I'm to go by
the people of Njeri voted me because I actually went to the ground and I convinced them that I was a better candidate than any other candidate who was running against me. And I convinced them I was a better candidate in many ways. I told them the stuff I would do for them, the things I would ensure would happen. For example, one of the things I remember making a commitment to the people of Njeri is that I would actually upgrade the education infrastructure. The public schools. We have a lot of public schools that are very old, and I would upgrade that education infrastructure. Now, that is not leadership. That is work. That is me going out and saying, we have 78 public schools. They're in a really bad state. I will make sure they get fixed.
So what is
now,
leadership?
When you get in, leadership is giving direction. It's being able to take hard decisions that are not necessarily popular. Very few politicians are able to stand against a popular position. I have had the benefit of doing that a couple of times. When I started by challenging my colleagues in Jubilee, who are doing premature campaigns, I was not popular. It was not a popular position. But today, it looks back and I have people telling me that was leadership. Now, a lot of my colleagues were not willing to do that because it was not popular, despite the fact that it was leadership, because we needed to get Kenyans to understand this is not the time to be doing politics. We have 4 years to work, and then we can do politics again. So every time I said that, I was unpopular. I got attacked by my colleagues. They came to Njeri, did harambes, brought a lot of money to local institutions in my place to fight me because I was saying something that was right but unpopular. Now, a lot of politicians will not do the right thing if it is unpopular. And leadership is actually doing the right thing.
So just going by the argument that you preferred,
yes,
a politician has a finger on the pulse and understands exactly what the people want. Let's even start with when you were starting the Kieleweke movement, and pushing the Kieleweke narrative. Is it that you had actually looked at the people of Njeri and thought that what the people of Njeri want to hear is this Kieleweke narrative?
First and foremost, I don't even know what you believe or what you understand the Kieleweke narrative is. And second,
the Kieleweke narrative is anti-Tanga-Tanga. It's as simple as that.
I see now. That's the problem.
But that's what you've just said. You started a campaign.
You don't understand.
You started a campaign.
To stop premature campaigns.
There you go.
Yes. And you see, let me tell you the second thing, Eric. I never intended to start a movement. In fact, I read about it in the newspapers and I laugh. I wasn't trying to build followership. I wasn't trying to be popular. I was just saying something I believed was correct.
Mheshimiwa.
This was 2018. Let me be honest. This is 20. We have just finished an election in 2017 October. That's when we finished the second repeat election. This is 2018. By the way, remember I started talking against premature campaigns even before the handshake. So this is February 2018. We've started going around the country campaigning for William Ruto to be president in 2022. And the first thing I said, guys, this is wrong and it is going to get you in trouble. And you will understand what I'm saying, which is what Kieleweke actually means.
So now when you
This
came
is gonna
out,
get you in
when you
trouble.
came out with those sentiments in public, were you doing it as fueled by what the people wanted you to say, or were you doing this of your own personal leading conviction?
Now, that's the difference between me and a lot of politicians, because I did it out of my personal leading conviction. It was not popular at all. In fact, if you notice, for the whole of 2018, I was in running battles, literally, with my colleague politicians, because they didn't like what I was saying. But I believed, and by the way, the papers would write about the way it's a one-man show, I'm doing Lone Ranger tactics. My colleagues would actually make fun about the fact that I am the only one in my region who doesn't support the deputy president. And I told them it's not about supporting the deputy president, which is why I'm saying I was not trying to start a movement. Somehow it actually built up into a movement, but for a long time mine was a position. And I have never tried to start a movement. Mine was, this is my position. And I always say, I could be wrong. I am happy to be wrong. But if I have a conviction about something, for example, the same way right now I have a conviction about this Watu Fulani narrative, when I have I'm not trying to be popular. I'll stand up and speak. I have a platform. I'm an elected member of parliament. I don't know how long I'm going to be elected. But for as long as I'm in office, I will use this office to push these things that I believe are right. If you think they are wrong, I'm willing to argue about it with you until you prove to me that why I'm wrong. And if I'm wrong, and I'm going to accept I'm wrong.
Okay. You talk about then being on the outside in terms of popularity. And now if we're looking at leaders in general in this country, it seems that when we hear things, this is what we perceive. And I say we on the other side of leadership, right? We perceive that a lot of the things that are made public in terms of how leaders speak them are not necessarily at the heartbeat of the interests of Kenyans, but are things that you feel will help you gain some political expediency or alignment that will be positive for you in the future. Would you say that this is not the case?
That's, again, I'll come back from a theoretical perspective. I'm a political scientist in terms of what I did in school. And one of the biggest problems we have is the connection between what we think is political expediency when you're sitting somewhere in analyzing it and what actually the public wants. Let's use an example of Nairobi County. I keep hearing people complaining about the fact that Sonko got elected. I have a feeling if he went to office, he went into an election today, he'll still get elected again.
True.
But we are here seated arguing about all the things that he's doing that don't make sense. But there's a population in this county that will actually come out and vote for him. So you ask yourself, you who is seated here thinking about the things Sonko is supposed to be doing, fixing roads, fixing our medical facilities, and then there's somebody out there who is happy with Sonko because he came out and rolled on the streets. And they think that is such a cool thing, they're going to elect him for it. Now, if you're a politician who just wants to get elected, you're going to look at the cool things. You're going to dress in a cool way. You sit down, and remember, politicians actually are pretty smart. So when you're getting elected, the first thing you do is map out where your population is. So in a country where we say 75% of our population is young people don't have a concrete expectation of leadership. What they want you to do is associate yourself with them. They want you to listen to their kind of music. They want you to dress like them. They want you to speak like them. If you can do those things, they will vote for you. Once they put you in office, and they will put you in office because they're going to vote for you against their parents, they're going to vote for you against older people who are more reasonable about the expectations of the leadership or the political leadership they want to elect. Once they put you in office, they have absolutely no expectation of what they want you to deliver.
Don't you think that is really broadly speculative to actually state that this entire group of people who we consider youth don't really know what they want in the leadership? I would argue they do.
Okay, but that would be a good argument. But you tell me where it is that they have actually voted for someone based on an expectation. And I was going to give you an example of a conversation I had recently with the members of the clergy in my constituency. So we sat and they were pretty upset about the COVID rules and how they were affecting the church. And they tell me, look, we are very unhappy. I'm a child of clergy. My dad is a retired clergy. And they're telling me, you're a child of clergy. You understand the importance of church. Why aren't you standing out there and speaking against the things that are happening to church? And I asked them, I have been in office for 2 years, close to 3 years, 3 years now. You all know me. You all know my family. At what point have you ever come and said, member of parliament, we want to sit down with you. This is what we want you to go and do for us. I asked them, even when I was getting elected, when we met, we didn't talk about, you didn't give me a to-do list. You put me in office because you knew my family, you knew my parents, and you knew I was going to be a good person. Now I'm in office. We're supposed to be having a conversation about this is what we as a sector, as a religious sector, want you to go and do for us. That's the meeting when they gave me an expectation. And they gave me a religious act that they want me to deliver on. Now they have something to judge me on. Before that, they didn't have anything to judge me on because we had never had an agreement. Tell me how many voters have discussions with the people they're going to put in office about what that person is going to go and do for them.
Tell me how many politicians campaign on an issue-based platform. Tell me how many politicians challenge, I am not talking about you are an exception, sir. I am talking about the general trend of things in this country, even with political parties. When do they have issue-based, even campaigns? When? It's rabble-rousing, crowd-pleasing. When?
And actually, but also, CT, actually, just to go on that, I would say that, strictly speaking, if you just to be very technical about it, politicians campaign on issues. Because Njeri will go and he will try to convince the people of Njeri, this is your need. Schools. I am going to upgrade the schools. Right? That is an issue. He has picked an issue that really resonates with the people. And then he'll go to parliament and he'll start talking about Tangatanga Kieleweke. He'll start talking about other things. Well, at the same time, let's hope that he actually goes and does something to deliver on the schools. So every politician, even Sonko, when he's rolling down on the road, he is promising something. He's saying, we are going to improve this city. We are going to bring markets here. We are going to bring a stadium here. We are going to ensure that these youth that don't have jobs have car washing businesses and other businesses that will open locally. So you see, there are some issues that they'll raise.
There are issues, but it's a con. Why it's a con is because I believe, if I'm to go by the former, the dictates of what the former Prime Minister of Singapore said, that one of the roles he believes a politician should have was to equalize opportunity. There are other things he said, but I'm focusing on this. When you talk about building schools, because you have a constituency development fund, when you talk about building roads, because you have monies that can do that, what are you telling the citizenry? Are you telling them that you are bringing goodies, or are you telling them that you are doing your job?
Okay, no, for a moment I wasn't sure whether you're asking that to me or to Eric.
I have lumped you and Eric in the same basket.
Oh, you put me and Eric in the same. Okay. The first thing I wanted for us to understand is that 70% of members of parliament or elected politicians go home every election. So 3 out of 10 people are the ones who get elected back. Now, when you're running for election the first time, you're running on promises. And promises are easy to make because you don't have, you have no, you have no delivery position. I can tell you, I'm going to make sure that you have milk coming out of your taps in your house. I mean, I can promise you anything when I'm running for office.
Great.
When you're getting re-elected, you're judged on delivery of the promises you made. Which is why a lot of people don't come back. And that's now the problem about our politics, that you don't even get held to account for the promises you're making before you get elected. People are willing to literally buy anything you tell them, as unreasonable as it sounds. But people will not ask you, but that how exactly are you going to do that? And one of the things I have found interesting is our political manifestos, especially as members of parliament or MCAs or governors or senators. Our political manifestos, when you're selling yourself the first time, are never audited by people. Nobody actually sits down and says, these things you're promising to do, we don't even have the kind of money you can do to do them.
Yeah.
Where are you going to actually be able to...
It's not even your mandate to do them.
Yes. So you're going to tell people, I am going to make sure we have A, B, C, D, but that's not the role of a member of parliament. But people are going to buy it.
Can I ask you that? But when these things are being put out in the public, do you, as leaders, when you're thinking as Njeri, do you expect the people of Kenya to come and ask you, or to put you to task, or to hold you accountable? Do you expect that to happen across board?
Your question is an interesting explanation of the problem we have, because we are the people of Kenya, including ourselves, as leaders. Leaders are actually elected from within the people of Kenya. So the person you have elected is just like you. So he went and he compared himself with 5 other people like him.
And felt he was the
said,
one.
And no, he actually proved to the 100 of you who are voting that he's better than the other 4. Because part of elections here is not, part of politics in our country is not competing against our ideal. It is competing against the others.
So then in that position, do you expect that your fellow people are going to ask you or hold you to account? Because again, looking from it from this point of view, it's that most leaders don't even expect Kenyans to ask them or hold them accountable. Don't expect
Actually,
to be held
it's only in
accountable.
politics.
Sorry?
It's only in politics.
It's only in politics,
It's only in
that people
politics
don't
that
expect.
people do not expect to be held to account.
I can tell you another profession, conman.
But you see, in there's no profession like that. You see, the only profession that exists where we pay people good money. This is good public money.
Yep.
We give them good titles. We give them a good lifestyle. We allow them to come and sit at the front of every event you're having, every function you're having. You actually you give them a position of prestige, and then you don't ask them questions.
You know,
let's take a break.
You see, I find that so interesting. It's very, very interesting.
Let's take a break. We'll continue this conversation. Interesting points that you're raising here. Njeri Thorne is the Member of Parliament for Njeri Town. We are asking politicians' interest versus public interest, and where do those two meet, if at all? 27 minutes to 8 o'clock. Time for us to take a break. Take a look at the weather and traffic. We'll be back shortly.
The weather with Spice
still
FM.
slightly overcast in Nairobi at 15 degrees. Mostly cloudy conditions for most parts of the morning. We'll see highs of 27, and yes, still heavy chance of rain today, going to highs of 27. Njeri will see highs of 24 today. Mostly cloudy currently at 14. Mostly sunny in Nakuru at 14 degrees, going to highs of 26 and coming down to lows of 11. It's mostly sunny in Eldoret at 14 degrees, highs of 23 and lows of 12, with showers expected in the afternoon. 29 degrees is what the high will be in Kisumu today. It's currently partly cloudy at 19. And in Kakamega, it's sunny at 17 degrees, highs of 27. And the rain is going to come in later Mombasa, showers expected, actually ongoing at the moment at 24 degrees, and that's going to be the situation through most of Friday. Highs of 28 and lows of 24. It's mostly cloudy in Malindi at 24 and also likely to start rains soon, going to highs of 28. Kampala's cloudy at 20 degrees, highs of 28 and lows of 18. And I told you the fog is back in Dar es Salaam, 23 degrees, highs of 31 and lows of 22, and a chance of showers later on. It's mostly sunny in Johannesburg at 13 degrees, going to highs of 25 today, and Lagos is 30 degrees and partly cloudy, highs of 30 and lows of 23.
Spice FM. Njeri.
Still quite bad on the Kasarani Mwiki Road today, and it's affecting traffic this morning. It's not even bumper to bumper. It's just not moving because people are still trying to use this road that should have been fixed a very, very long time ago, and this is not happening yet. Thika Road towards the CBD is flowing very well. Build-ups at Githurai Roundabout, Safari Park, Garden City, GSU Survey and Pangani Outstretch. Outbound is flowing well now. Those who are getting out of the city are not having too much of a headache as they're trying to do that. Coming to the CBD, however, Mombasa Road is not looking bad either. It's not as clogged as we expected to be right about this time, but we'll see what it looks like in a short while. For now, you should be able to get through it without too much of a problem. Okay, so now we know why there's traffic at Allsops. That's because two vehicles have decided to say hello Friday to each other this morning, and that means that until that's cleared, it's going to take a while to get rid of that traffic. Okay, all right. Coming out of different parts of the city, though, it looks okay. You shouldn't have too much problems this Friday morning. If you do, let us know. At least we'll see how we can move things about. I think Spice FM KE on Twitter.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
Happy Friday from wherever you're tuned in, anywhere in the world. www.spicefm.co.ke or watching our live stream on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Spice FM KE, or listening to the radio 94.4 in Nairobi, Mombasa 87.9, 102.5 in Kisumu, Nakuru 96.0, Eldoret 96.7, Malindi 97.7, or Njeri 90.9. We are speaking with Njeri Thorne MP Njeri Okoh, politician interest versus personal interest. And we've got it to a point where, so we're seeing politicians go to campaign because they want to get elected, and they will say what they feel will resonate with the people so that they get elected and convince the people that I have given you better promises than the other guy. Promise.
Yeah, but according to Mheshimiwa himself, he himself has stated quite clearly that promises are easy to make, so they will make them.
Yep.
Now,
Yes.
if you say things which you know that don't necessarily represent the truth, you are a con man. Essentially, when Eric, this is where I was coming from, when Eric talked about conmanship being a profession, then you would lump not just politicians, but people who are in government in that same basket, because they say things they know they have no intentions of doing, they know cannot be done, but this is the vehicle they use to get themselves to where they are.
Well, in my opinion, some politicians are conmen. Some politicians make promises they do not know cannot be delivered. Because remember, for most people who are getting into office the first time, you actually don't know exactly how much you can deliver from that office. It's a one job that you do not practice for before you get it. We've seen people who are MCAs or members of parliament who just came from a totally different profession. But just because you are popular with a higher population of people than anybody else, you then now become a member of parliament. And you report into parliament, you go for orientation, you are told that you have three responsibilities. One is to make laws. The second one is to oversight government. The third one is to represent the people of Kenya or the people of the place that elected you. Those are the three roles that you're supposed to have as a member of parliament, incidentally.
Yep.
Now, it means you need to know how to make laws. You need to be able to know how to develop a bill, how to research, blah, blah, blah. Now, that, for a lot of people who go to parliament for the first time, you don't have that background.
Mm-hmm.
The second background you're supposed to do is to oversight government. Oversight in government means you're looking at the expenditure of government. So government comes to you with proposals of what they want to do that year. They propose how much money they want, and you as parliament are supposed to make sure that you allocate that money based on what government has proposed. But then you bring in your own interventions of no, I don't think you need $1 billion shillings to do this. You most probably can do it with half a billion.
Yep.
Again, you need to have some understanding of how to do that. How many people do we put in office because they know how to do that? How many people do we actually sell themselves to be elected based on knowing how to do that?
How many voters know that this is what?
Who's at the
Exactly.
Who's at the disadvantage here? At the end of the day,
see,
when you look at this,
when
somebody comes to campaign, nobody is saying, you know what, I'd really like to be your leader, but I really don't know the intrigues of the inner workings of government. I really don't understand how to do this. But in that euphoria of the moment, it is telling you at that point, essentially hoodwinking you into believing that they know what they're doing.
I'll bring water.
No, he's not hoodwinking. He's actually not hoodwinking you. Because remember, you're the one who's putting him in office.
Based on, but just like you said, based on the assumption that you have laid now very well that they know what they're doing.
But now, so
how many of them are going to admit what you've just said? Honestly,
what
I think
that they don't, that they actually don't know what they're going in to do.
Mheshimiwa has asked a good question. Mheshimiwa, you've asked a good question. Whose fault is it?
Yes,
because I wouldn't look at this particular issue from the position of fault, because the elected leader may just be as ignorant as his constituency. So in that case, you just blame the Kenyan population. But what I'm saying is this: even if you enter this august house when you're ignorant, you don't remain ignorant for 5 years.
True.
So in the process of being in that office, you will understand what needs to be done and what you can actually do. Where the lie
but
comes in.
But do you see the danger?
Yes.
Do you see the danger of what we're doing? It's like electing somebody to be a doctor and then he learns how to be a doctor on the job.
Okay, so in this case...
yes.
No. It's
actually, how I see the danger is this. That a mechanic comes to you, tells you he's going to bring piped water. He's a mechanic. He's coming to promise piped water.
And you know he's a mechanic.
And he wants you to give him the job of a doctor.
And you actually give it to him.
And you give him the job of a doctor because he's going to bring piped water and he's a mechanic.
So whose fault is it?
I would say it's everybody's. I would say it's everybody's. So the first person is the person who is making that decision. The second person is the mechanic who is promising to bring water when he becomes a doctor. Because
the person who is promising to bring water when he becomes a doctor that's a guy who is saying whatever he thinks you need to hear. You elect him.
It's a proper
But you're the one who's electing him.
So are you saying that Kenyan voters essentially don't know what they're doing when it comes to elective politics?
The reason you've summed it up. The reason we are in the kind of political problems we find ourselves every 5 years is because the Kenyan voter doesn't actually take the time to understand who they need to put in which office. I always compare this with other elected offices for outside politics. And for example, for me as a politician, when I'm out going around Mashinani, the conversation I'll always ask them is, when you're electing leaders in church, when you're electing the chairman of the board, when you're electing the treasurer of the church, when you're electing the representatives of the church, you rarely make a mistake. Even if your brother is running for office and you know he's a thief, you're not going to elect him as a treasurer of your church.
Yep.
In fact, you're the one who's going to convince everybody else how he can't be. And he doesn't give you money to do it. But if you're putting together a fundraising committee to raise money for your local church or your local school or something, or a friend who is unwell, you actually put the right people in the right place. So we know how to do this, except in politics.
Well, if you look at the role of politics and the large space it occupies in our lives on a daily basis, you really have to ask an additional question to what we are asking. Do you think the general public is more likely to conform, or are they likely to move towards the direction of non-conformity? I would say they are likely to conform. It's not that they're ignorant. It is, I'm saying, the push to conformity. Since he is a Mheshimiwa, it is okay. We have that tendency in our country. Because so-and-so has this particular position, we will not tell him the truth. We will not speak our minds. We will conform. And the politicians themselves, because it is the leader of my party who has said this, I will not oppose it, I will conform. Because it is in my interest, and this ceiling that we are raising for our borrowing may also benefit me in some way, or we have found a way of it benefiting us, we will continue with it and continually put the government into this ridiculous debt that they have. Conformity.
Actually, no. So conformity is easy, but that person wasn't always a leader. So why are you conforming to him? And then number two, do you understand the responsibilities of your office? Because, for example, you've given a very good example about the borrowing. Part of the reason I will support the raising of the ceiling is because I understand how much money we actually spend as a country. So my decision is based on knowledge. Somebody else will support it based on the fact that the president actually said it. And because I support the president, I'm going to have to do it. Somebody will oppose it because I don't agree with anything the president does, because I come from the opposition party, so I cannot support anything the president does because I'm a member of the opposition. So a lot of the reasons that politicians make decisions are based on other things. Now, we as the people need to put in office people who will make decisions based on conviction. And that person doesn't start making decisions like those after you elect him.
What sort of convictions?
He has made those kind of decisions before.
What sort of convictions?
Eric, for example...
No, this is Muga. This is CT Muga.
Oh, this is Muga. Okay. I was going to use an example of Eric. I've known Eric for a long time. I know the kind of person he is. So if I am looking for I have a particular slot of office, I will be able to judge whether he can fit into it or not based on who he is, not based on what he tells me at that moment. Now, we have a situation where when we are running for office, you show up, people don't know you, and because you have a lot of money and you can run a really loud campaign, people will vote for you. After the dust has settled, they wake up and they don't even know who they voted for. Number two, we have a country that votes against people. So Eric was a member of parliament before. I asked him to do something for me. He refused. So in the next election, I mobilized against him.
I'd rather vote for a dog than Eric.
Exactly. So after the dust is settled, I have sent Eric home. But in the space, because somebody had to get elected, some other guy who got into office, I have no idea what he stands for. 2 years down the road, I realized the guy is a complete disaster.
Yep.
And I started complaining about him. And in 3 years, I vote against him. And I will keep doing that
it's a cycle.
Every election. So the only person I know is the person I'm voting against.
But don't you see there in that, the voter is actually expressing their frustration. The voter is saying something. The fact that the voter kicks out 70% of these leaders is saying something. Every 5 years, a voter is thinking, no, the last person that we had elected in Njeri Town did not serve us, did not
deliver.
They did not deliver. No, we even forgot their promises. They just did not act like they were acting in our best interest of the people of Njeri.
Yes.
And therefore, that's why we want to listen to this other young man who is the son of a preacher, and let's give him this opportunity.
Yes.
The young man serves 5 years and he's going back home, and the people are looking at, did we feel like this person was representing us? Did we feel like this person actually had our best interest at heart? And if they feel that they didn't, they kick you out. They bring in somebody else.
Exactly. Actually, sometimes they don't even think like that. Sometimes the decision will be that the last election, the member of parliament who was there had stayed for too long. We need to change.
Or they're in a different political party.
Or they were in the wrong party.
Yeah.
So we elect this young man, pretty decent-looking guy. Sounds like he's intelligent. Put him in office. But you didn't tell him what you want him to go and do for you. You see, like in first world democracies, for example, you have political action caucuses. So that for me to get the support of the unions, I sit with the unions before elections.
Right.
And they challenge me and they tell me this is what we want from government. Then I promise them I'll get it for you. Then I sit with the Pentecostals and they tell me this is what we want from government. And I promise and I show them how I can get it for them. By the time I'm getting elected, I have
a to-do list.
I have a to-do list based on certain things.
You have KPIs,
For example,
basically.
Yes. So I go into office, and at the end of 5 years, the union, when I'm going back to them to ask them to support me, I will be looking at, this is what you'd asked me to do. You gave me 10 things. I have delivered on 7. Or I have delivered on 6. Now, in this country, we don't do that.
Why?
We never... Part of it is because it's not part of our political culture.
Why can't it be?
Actually,
I don't think it's part of political interest, if I can go that far as saying that.
No. But
is
you see,
it really in the interest of politicians to have this done? Because then you would want to ask, then is it in the interest of people for why politicians are getting into office in the first place?
You see, the problem I have with a lot of this argument, because it's a popular argument. What you're pushing with me is a popular argument, that it is the fault of the politician that we are in this trouble.
No.
Politicians, let me explain that. Sorry,
Yeah, okay.
let me explain that. Politicians take the lowest common denominator. They take the lowest hanging fruits. If you do not give me a challenge, I will go with whatever you give me. Because what I want to do is get into office. So if you are not going to give me a standard to follow, I will not follow it.
Okay. So
if you give me a standard to follow,
Yep.
then the people who fit that standard are the ones who will will compete.
So if
for example, if we agree, I need a degree. For example, if we agree that I must have a degree to run for office, then only people with degrees will run for office. But if we don't have that kind of expectation, then anybody, and I'm not saying that a degree is necessarily important or not. I'm just saying the danger of not having a standard in how we do our politics means that you will take whoever.
But Mheshimiwa, don't you see that then we can argue that the politicians are actually encouraging this culture of mediocrity?
Right.
But you only have one politician. For example, we have 349 people in parliament.
No. This person is not just a politician. When we elect this person, when we put these persons in office, we actually elevate them. That, just like you said, we give them a role, and this is a leadership role. Now,
but what did you give him? Eric,
whatever expectations we had, when you get to that caucus as leaders, and you're saying this is what is happening, this is how come we get voted in, voted out all the time, we ought to have better standards as leaders, then you start championing those better standards.
Or even, promote
those better standards. Say, this is what I want you to judge me on.
Even at the risk of losing your seat.
Election, go and say, you know what, people, the last time I came and promised to do all the primary schools in Njeri Town. Listen, guys, I realized when I went to Parliament that, first of all, the only capacity that I have to do that is using the influence of the CDF. But I don't have any other capacity to build schools. But this is what I have as a member of parliament. I can influence such that the national government can come and build schools. I can influence the budgetary allocation, and I can influence policy direction. This is actually what I'd like us to do. Let's elevate. Judge me from this going forward. I want you people to judge me by this.
Now, as you say that, there'll be some other guy who wants your position.
There always is some other guy.
Yeah, who will be telling people that no. The reason this guy is not building schools is because he's not able,
incapable.
Not because he's incapable. It has nothing to do with that he doesn't have the money to do it. If I was in his office, I would be able to build schools, even if it means I use my own money. You understand?
Yeah, but it's because you've taken 5 years to come and explain this to me. If you're explaining this to me during a re-election campaign, then you'll have a problem. If you've spent the last 5 years showing me the difference between what you promised, what you can deliver, and what you can then deliver using your position, use that position in those 5 years to show me I have influenced policy, and now this is the path that we're taking. The schools in Njeri Town are going to improve in the next 15 years because of the policy that I've influenced in Parliament. Then now, by the time you're coming back to me in 5 years' time in the re-election campaign, I'll already be knowing what we are talking about.
Also, the education of the public involves such procedures. You do something, you may even lose your seat. And all you require is somebody who will come in with a lovely story and nothing more, and they will realize that indeed they made a mistake. They will have learned because they will understand this was an honest, truthful man who told us what could actually happen and what couldn't. Doesn't stop you from being re-elected again.
We have a lot of honest, truthful men who never actually get into office at all.
Right, very
because
true.
Unfortunately, they don't make it because Kenyans have a problem with... Yes, because you're not going to go and run for office and tell people that, I can only do this much. I can't do everything.
You want to overpromise so that they get you in the seat.
They want to overpromise people. And now, I want to believe I'm part of the 30% that is hopefully going to come back. Why? Because I am trying to deliver what I promised. For example, out of the 78 schools in Njeri, so far we've done 48. And we still have 2 years to go. So I could actually be able to do all the schools using the NGCDF funds. And now, because I'm a vice chair of the education committee, I'm able to also lobby for infrastructural money from the ministry. So I could actually do this. But I want to consider myself an exception, as you say, because I actually tried to promise only what I knew could be delivered, because I understood the job I was going to do.
And you got elected.
Not too many.
And you got elected.
I promised, for example, one of the promises I made, which people outside Njeri don't understand, was that I promised the people of Njeri I was going to mainstream Njeri into national politics. Now, that during a promise sounds very vague, but I have done it.
So that was a strategy
You
at that point. So you're not against... You were not really speaking out against the deputy president. You were basically getting a platform for Njeri.
No. It's twofold, Eric. You see, what most politicians tend to do is not step out of the comfort zone. So you just operate within a certain comfort zone, because in that comfort zone, you don't really stand out in either. You're not an extremist on either side. So mine was, I will actually go out there and make sure that Njeri's voice is heard every time national conversations are being held. And I have tried to do that as much as possible. And because of that, Njeri is one of those places you invite the Njeri Member of Parliament onto Spice FM, because you know him. Hello?
So if you're going to be prescriptive here, and we've talked about the fact that you somebody to blame, putting in somebody into government, and you know who this person is, you know who he or she is, what would you say that people ought to do, especially when it comes to things like public participation, holding leaders accountable, that then need to be put in place by an act of parliament? For example, how would that happen when it is hinged on the same leaders making it possible for people to come and lend their voice?
Which is actually what I was going to say. There's no way a politician is going to pass a law trying to hold him into account. I mean, we have been struggling to just raise the academic level in Parliament, and we're arguing that you don't have to have any academic qualifications to be a leader. Which other job do we make that kind of argument? But somehow we actually allow that to pass. And it tells you that the reason, in my opinion, the people who employ politicians are the ones at fault. And this is why when I was talking about whose fault it is that today, if you're going to employ someone to take care of your house, and you do not have an expectation of that person, meaning that the person who comes and tells you, I'm going to make sure your walls are white every day, well, you know that is not possible. But just because you like them or they look nice, and you actually give them the job, and then they don't do that, and in 2-3 months you fire them, and you hire somebody else. Before you hire in any job, you have a checklist. And in that checklist, you break down what you need, except in politics.
Njeri Okoh, I think 1 hour is a short time. We'll invite you again for a continuation of this conversation. Thank you very much for speaking to us this morning.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Njeri Okoh is the MP for Njeri Town. Asante sana for joining us. This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. People of Njeri, 90.9. In Malindi, 97.7. Eldoret, 96.7. 96.0 in Nakuru. Kisumu, 102.5. 87.9 in Mombasa. And 94.4 in Nairobi. Good morning. It's now 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock.
Spice up your life. 102.5 Spice FM, Kisumu.
Outering, as I'm seeing, ni Kubaya accident right there at around Mutindo. A private car hits a pickup just at the exit of Kangunda Road, and again a problem with the markings on the road. Abrupt ending of lanes on Outer Ring Road, and those who are coming from Donholm, as it said, Jipangeni, right? it's going to be a problem there on that part. We also have the problems within industrial area that we've been able to see before, and that's because of road closure due to construction. It's a hiccup that's not going to last for too long. Eventually, it will get better in that area, but for now, you're just going to have to sit through the waiting. Outbound on the Thika Road is not so bad. Inbound also is actually flowing very, very smoothly. We don't have much problems, except for the problems at most of the exits now inbound. But after that, you will not enter into a bumper-to-bumper situation. All right, let's look at Mombasa Road and then getting into the CBD via the Nyayo Stadium roundabout. Now is when we see the hold-up is forming between the Nyayo Stadium roundabout on the Uhuru Highway all the way through to Westlands as trying to get into the CBD. We expect this to happen. Hopefully it won't last too long this Friday morning. You get stuck somewhere, you find an alternate route, let us know. The eastern and southern bypasses are open and flowing smoothly. Remember, though, demarcation lanes have not been marked there either, so be careful as you drive. Spice FM KE, that's how you can reach us on Twitter.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Nduh Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room.
The Situation Room broadcasts every weekday morning, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. from Nairobi to Mombasa, Kisumu, Nakuru, Eldoret, Nyeri, Malindi, and worldwide on www.spicefm.co.ke or SpiceFMKE on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. You can join the conversation anytime on our social media platforms, or also that also includes Instagram, which is Spice FM KE. Now, we have a sister station called Vibes Radio. And Vibes Radio's slogan is, nobody can stop reggae. But there are people who want to stop reggae. And you know, reggae that we're talking about here is the BBI reggae. Raila Odinga has been saying, you know, reggae has been on pause. Now we are on pause in reggae. We are going to press play and we will move with the BBI process, which is going to culminate into a referendum which will bring in some amendments to the Constitution. Now, there are some activists, and these are 5 activists: Ika Langley, Wanjiru Gikonyo, James Gondi, Jerotich Say, and David Day, who have gone to court, and they want the matter to be interpreted. And this is what their application is in the matter of threatened contravention and violation of Chapter 1, Chapter 2, Chapter 4, 9, 10, and in particular Articles 256 and 257 of the Constitution of Kenya, and on the application of the legal doctrine and theory of the basic structure of a constitution, the doctrine of constitutional entrenchment clauses, unamendable constitutional provisions, the doctrine and theory of constitutional amendments, the theory of unamendability of eternity clauses, essential features, supra-constitutional laws in a constitution, and the implied limitations to constitutional amendments in Kenya. Basically, what the 5 are saying is that in that doctrine, there are some structures of a constitution that define or make that constitution. There are some clauses of a constitution that actually are at the core of that constitution. If you amend that clause, you have changed that constitution. You now have a different constitution. And the one that's the court to give opinion on this or to rule on this particular matter. For example, they're saying on issues of Chapter 1, which is on citizenship, if you amend anything on Chapter 1 on citizenship, which says we the people, the sovereignty of people have the sovereignty and they exercise that sovereign power through their elected leaders and with institutions. Okay? If you amend that, then you have changed the entire essence of that constitution. They are also looking at chapter 2 and all the other chapters that I have read. And I'm going to just get straight into some of their arguments and read some of what they've presented before court. But I also will be discussing with them to understand what, and we're having this conversation earlier, CT. It's like saying, this is what defines CT Muga. Okay? As a person. You've got your unique features. You've got your thumbprint. If we chopped off your hand and fixed another hand and changed, therefore, your thumbprints, do we still have CT Muga?
The argument is even made more interesting when you consider the discussions around gender. What is it that determines the various genders?
Yeah. CT Muga is a man.
Yes, or the alternative, must it always be, or might it only be CT Muga could be a woman? Or better still, do we have genders that cannot be referred to as either or
the other?
Now, when you look at the argument around this, then this particular discussion that we are just about to embark on becomes even more interesting.
Yeah.
Because the same questions will arise. When you say this is the definition, what's the premise? And can it be the only one? Is there only one path to understanding this? Or could one use the very, very argument that you're using in Converse and say, well, in so bringing this discussion to the fore, what you've actually done is proven the point that you are trying to disprove. Yes.
How?
Well, if you say that what you're talking about essentially is the principles that surround the structures of the Constitution, the moment you start saying that certain laws, if passed, certain ideas, if brought to their logical conclusion, will interfere with the structure, then what you've actually done is you brought in a discussion of whether what you're saying is the only truth that can be brought into the discussion. And probably this is why a determination on it is required. But it opens up a very broad discussion. Very broad.
It does, really, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Because what, for example, they've taken to court, they're arguing about doctrines. The doctrine and theory of the basic structure of a constitution, the doctrine of constitutional entrenchment clauses. Even in this constitution, there are some clauses that basically this constitution has said, this can be amended by the people's representatives. This constitution can be amended either by an initiative starting from Parliament or from a popular initiative by the people. And we've seen like what Punguza Mizigo was. It was a popular initiative taking that route. And all this, there are some clauses that cannot just be amended by Parliament. They must go back to the people to participate in a referendum. But now they're taking it further and saying, even with that, there are some clauses that should basically be protected from any form.
All right.
If you want to change them, then you're changing the constitution. Let's go through the whole process like we did again and vote in a new constitution and promulgate a new constitution as a new supreme law of the country.
Now, do you see why it opens up the discussion? Because what you're essentially saying is that if you follow that very constitutional requirement of ensuring that it isn't something that is altered within our august houses, but it is actually taken to the people who are the owners of the constitution and the country, and then you have an argument which says, no, this one you don't need to take it to the people in this manner. You need to take it to the people in this manner so that this is what we do. As I said, you've opened up, not this one, as Nduh said this morning, barrel loads.
Barrel loads,
Of
right?
issues. Yes, it isn't just a can of worms. Barrel load of worms.
I'm liking that conversation. And I just want to bring it back to when we said we define, this is Eric Latiff. Okay? Eric Latiff, what is it that
Constitutes
Eric Latiff?
Eric, yeah.
My blood group is known. I have the same blood group from birth to death. I have the same fingerprint from birth to death. I have certain features, all right? So yes, I've got a lazy eye. I can go and change this eye and put another one. I'll still be Eric Latiff.
You have the same fingerprints.
Same fingerprint.
How did you manage that?
I have got my fingerprints. If we went and changed a finger, all right, and put in somebody else's finger onto this hand, and then we went to the government records, work a fingerprint up.
Right.
The records that we have for Eric Latiff are this, and this is what now we are seeing this person who's presenting himself. Is this Eric Latiff?
So the makeup of you essentially has changed.
Has changed.
Yeah.
So should we be saying that this has changed? Is that what we're talking about, the basic structure? Anyway, let's talk to one of the people who've taken this matter before court and seeking interpretation of this. And this is Chero Titsei, active citizen. Good morning, Chero.
Morning. How are you?
Good
Fine,
morning.
thank you.
Good to see you
good.
looking well, up and bubbly. The last time we were speaking with you, you could not really speak for so long without running out of breath.
How are you
My
feeling
breath
now?
is back. My breath is back.
Fantastic.
I'm much better. Thank you for asking.
City asks, how are you feeling now?
How are you feeling now?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
Yes? Or would you like me to ask someone else?
No, I thought I'd answered. Actually,
No,
I am
you didn't
feeling.
answer. You said your breath is back. I'm asking a more comprehensive question.
This is Kenyan speak, but if someone asks you how are you feeling now, you
don't say
"I'm
fine."
okay."
No.
Give a little bit more of the story.
But the Kenyans like to say hello, fine. So
All right, we've gone through the fine stage.
But-
Okay,
but
now
I
how
am
are you?
better. Titi, thank you so much for asking. I'm much better. I have recovered. I am stronger. Some of the after effects, the recovery is still, ongoing, but more or less I'm at 99%. So I'm really back to normal and very grateful for that.
Excellent. Now you've responded to my question.
Good.
So, Chero, let's talk about
Yes.
the Constitution and what this Constitution is. Constitution of Kenya, 2010, promulgated in 2010. It's now 10 years old. It has its chapters. And then now, we've gotten to a point where even the president has said, look, it's 10 years. Let's look at what has worked, what's not worked. Let's tweak what's not working so that it works for us. A constitution is a living document.
Yes.
The BBI, has been looking at what is it that is ailing our country right now. It was not this is a constitution movement. It was what is it that is ailing our country? What do we need to do as people? What do we need to do that will require some policy interventions, some interventions of acts of parliament, and maybe others interventions on the supreme law? This is a conversation that's still ongoing. We still haven't seen the final BBI report, but we saw from the initial report there were some things that, if they were to be taken, may have required some constitutional amendment. Then now we see the five of you bringing a very interesting conversation here, which is a doctrine of basic structure. What is this?
Well, I listened to your conversation, your overview and initial discussions, and I thought, good, you have grasped it very well. But one of the things I want to say is that, initially, as soon as we filed, everybody said, oh, this is against the BBI and so on and so forth, and so it as a counter attack. I mean, I think what I would like to underscore here is that the doctrine of basic structure of the Constitution is talking about more than what the final BBI report might attempt to push through in terms of future amendments, but rather looking at the whole in terms of the Constitution and saying, is it possible to immunize or inoculate the Constitution so that whenever there's elements of potential amendment, whether it's a correction or an elaboration, that we make sure that the core structure, the tenets of the Constitution, the non-negotiable elements of the Constitution are not infringed upon. And I think the whole discussion here is saying, if we are going to, and by the way, just to throw in, this did not start with BBI. Since between 2013 and 2020, there have been 13 unsuccessful attempts made by the Parliament to amend diverse provisions of the 2010 Constitution. So this is not something that came with BBI. There have been attempts for a very long time. And so we are exploring and seeking guidance and ruling on the doctrine of the basic structure of the Constitution. And we are saying that when you come in, and I liked your examples about the arm, CT's arm going. I was looking at my bookshelf actually the other day, and the books in my bookshelf, and I said, okay, I could rearrange the books. I could actually add to the books. I could decide to arrange them by size, or decide to even remove a book that is no longer useful as part of my collection of books. But the minute I take away the shelf that holds the books, then I have affected the structure of the bookshelf. Even if I try to put another shelf, it is no longer the original structure that we had agreed upon. And when Citi, you talk about opening up debate, I think this is really important. That debate should be opened up. And if people are sovereign, we the people, we are sovereign, we do have a right to look at our constitution and see what aspects need to be changed. But what we are saying with this particular petition is saying, if we the people want to so fundamentally alter the constitution, then perhaps we shouldn't be using articles that just allow us to amend and elaborate. Maybe we should go back to the drawing board. And you know, the process to the promulgation of the 2010 constitution was long and drawn out and deliberate and deliberated upon, debated, and starts and stops. And finally, we ended up with the promulgation after the Constitution of 2010 was put in place. So you can see that it shouldn't just be a simple case of an amendment here to alter that shelf in the bookshelf and say, yeah, we the people have said so. If we the people want to overhaul the Constitution, okay, let's go back to the drawing board, but not use these sneaky attempts to try and change aspects. And with this petition, as you said, Eric, we're looking at chapters 1, 2, 4, 9, 10, 11, 16. There are so many other chapters, but these are the chapters that give us pause for concern in terms of how they can be sneakily altered and adjusted, corrected, or elaborated upon, and affect the fundamental structure of the Constitution of Kenya.
Jero, what would you see as, I mean, you talk about, things that could be snuck in here and there for some kind of change. What would be some of the consequences that you see from these particular chapters that you've picked up on? What are some of the consequences that you see having effect on the people of Kenya who are supposedly holding on to sovereignty of this country?
That's a good question, Nduh, because when I look at chapters 9 and 10, when you're looking at the executive and the judiciary, and also 11, when you're looking at devolved government, those are areas that really concern me. And when you look at the erosion of devolution, if you look at even how long it took to come up with a formula, county revenue formula, and some of the things, if you studied the managed equipment scheme report that came from the Senate last week, it was released. You can see ways in which we have the executive violating consistently constitutional provisions that are put in place to protect and promote, in this case, Chapter 11, devolution. And this kind of slippery slope erosion of our respect and our fidelity to the Constitution of Kenya is what really worries us. Because if we now allow an amendment to be snuck in around Chapter 11, devolved government, and then around the judiciary, and the judiciary has also been under fire, for the executive, where you fundamentally alter the setup of the executive, we are really, really heading down a dangerous slippery slope, which will end us in some kind of morass, even though we say as the people, we voted in this plebiscite, or we agreed, or the parliament amended this or that or the other. We find ourselves in a place where the Constitution of Kenya no longer looks like the Constitution of Kenya.
But also there could be an argument that this same constitution and the drafters of the constitution foresaw the dangers of politicians trying to amend the constitution through the back door, just holding meetings and amending the constitution and loading it upon us. And that's why they included those clauses that say this specific chapters and clauses of the constitution can only be amended with the concurrence of a majority of the people of Kenya. And this is through a referendum. So already the constitution is well protected against any sort of manipulation that goes against popular opinion. If a majority of the people of Kenya think that it's about time that we amended a certain clause, and all together a majority of them go ahead and vote in a referendum, what's wrong with that?
You know, you make a very good point, Eric, and I would agree with you, except, and now let us just jump into BBI, because in any case, we are being seen as an anti-BBI constitutional petition. Let's look at the BBI. Yes, it is true that people are sovereign and that we would, the elusive final version of the BBI report might go down a path that would be popular and require a plebiscite, a referendum. When that happens in a genuine manner, where there's complete engagement of the people, not what we have seen with BBI when they did their road trips around the country. Yes, they may have visited every one of the 47 counties, but how did they engage? And when I read the first draft of the report that was released last year, it was evident to me, and I said it, and I've said it in other fora, that it wasn't that Wanjiko or that Mora or that Fatma or that Wakesho or that, Chekoech, who was sitting around saying, we want a prime minister or we want IBC to be restructured this way and that way. So in the case of BBI, my fundamental concern, having read the first draft or the first report in detail, is that it is creating a situation and setting Kenyans up to believe that it is them, the Kenyans, we the people, who actually want this. When in actual fact, I call it the Trojan horse. So you present something and say popularly, here we are, and we are going to run a referendum, and yes, this is what the Kenyans want. But is this what Kenya wants? Was I consulted? Were you consulted? And this is what we are trying to safeguard against, that we have political processes that try and mold the constitutional provisions to suit their political agenda that has nothing ultimately to do with the people of Kenya. So yes, you might say they have used the correct pathways, and yes, we the people, and there's a popular initiative, and so you can't say to politicians who are running this show. But this is still a case of the tail wagging the dog, or the Trojan horse, as I call it.
You know, the argument is sound, for argument's sake, but consider, if you look at even the constitutional processes that we had in this country, there are many parts of it that followed a similar path. Opinion gathering, perspective gathering, the whole 9 yards. And people will go by what they remember as having been considered, not necessarily included, considered in the discussion. Now, if we're talking about the BBI, this is what the BBI seem to have attempted to do, and they seem to have convinced the populace that they did go around the country and they did seek the opinions of the people who live in our various counties. Now, when you then bring in a specific argument such as the one that you have brought, then you then have to explain again to the same people, then what do you consider to be public participation, if not this?
Actually, I see Dr. Ndhi has joined, and maybe this is something that he could jump in with.
Yes, indeed, he has.
No, please go on, because let me catch on. I had a bit of a mishap, but apologies for that. I'll explain.
All right. Welcome to the show, Dr. David Ndhi, economist, columnist, and author. We are, of course, talking about the bid to stop the reggae of the BBI, but also just trying to understand what is it that we mean by structure of a constitution, and what is it that exactly we mean by, ring fencing some parts of the constitution so that they are not subject to any form of mischief or abuse. But just as Dr. Ndhi catches up, Chero, when you talk about popular initiative, and that's what City is saying, if you look at a popular initiative which is started, 1 million people at least signed signatures. This is verified by IEBC. This is taken through the 47 county assemblies. It is debated. It is passed by the people's representatives in at least half of those county assemblies. It goes to parliament. It then goes to the people in a referendum. Surely the people have been involved in that entire process of trying to amend that bit of the constitution.
Yes, but what if the people's involvement, and like I've already said, so I will not belabor the point, I'm a bit skeptical about this involvement business, but let me suspend my disbelief and say, okay, the people were involved. What if the decision is still to cut off CT Muga's arm? as we had earlier used, or to remove that shelf in the bookshelf.
Well,
there should be a space where even we the people understand that there are certain aspects or elements of the Constitution that we cannot popularly decide to amend or correct or elaborate without affecting the fundamental nature and structure of the Constitution. And when that is the case, if the people really want to cut off C.T. Muga's arm, then we need to go back to a different process, an entirely different process, where we come back and say, okay, this C.T. Muga, why is it that we want to cut his arm off? And if we're going to cut his arm off and use a prosthesis or a bionic arm, then we need to go about it in a different way, not this popular initiative, which is linked to, Articles 255, 257, where you can come in. This was designed for minor amendments. So we could clip C.T. Muga's fingernail, but not cut off his arm, whether it is popular or parliamentary. That's what I'm trying to say.
Let's bring you in now, Dr. David Nduh, and thank you very much for joining us this morning. So the whole discussion here is around protecting the supremacy of the Constitution and looking at the people and wondering whether the people should have a say in how they can amend their Constitution. I also see another side of the argument as well, which is saying if you touch on certain aspects of this Constitution, you might as well just be saying, let's overhaul the Constitution, bring in a new one, but don't say that you're amending. If you touch this, then you've changed. If I cut off Dr. David Nday's head and put on Eric Latiff's head, that is not Dr. David Nduh.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I again, sorry for had a bit of a physical mishap. That's another story. Let me start by giving an example. I don't know whether you follow African politics. A couple of years, about a decade ago, an Islamic party ran for elections in Algeria on the platform of abolishing the secular state and establishing an Islamic state. Mm-hmm. And they actually won the election. Mm-hmm. At that point, the Algerian military intervened and said, okay, Algeria as a secular state is sacrosanct. You cannot use the Algerian democracy to abolish democracy, even though the people, you've managed to sort of mobilize, whip up the emotions of the people at that particular point in time, which were mostly, sort of dissatisfied people with various types of governance issues. Now, what followed was some kind of civil war, civil strife, which went on for quite a while. Now, if Algeria had this sort of jurisprudence, sort of law on what the basic structure of its constitution is, that party would not probably have run on that platform because it would have been futile. We know that India's current government, BJP, would probably want to establish India as a sort of Hindu nationalist state. But fortunately, India, which is one of the pioneers of this kind of jurisprudence, the Indian courts have declared secularism, even though it is not mentioned in the Indian constitution. They have declared secularism as one of the basic structures of the Indian constitution, even if it doesn't say anywhere that India is a secular state. So I think we need to distinguish. What I'm saying is that how are the people acting when they endeavor to change some things in the constitution? Are they acting as sober people, or are they acting as a mob? Yeah. So that is one of the things. So the fact that people are doing something, it doesn't mean that they support the people are doing something. It doesn't mean they're doing the right thing. Mm-hmm. People have done horrible things as mobs, about genocide and stuff like that. The other thing is that we have a history of repealing a constitution by amendment. The independence constitution, there was no point at which they said, now we are abrogating this independence constitution and establishing an imperial presidency and restoring colonial laws, repressive laws. It was done by stealth. I think a total of 35 amendments or thereabouts from 1964 to about the mid-70s. Actually, right up to the enactment of Section 2A in 1981. That is what it took. It was repealed, a new dictatorial constitution established by stealth. So what we're saying is that political processes, people can destroy their own constitution and even destroy their own society. It is not an issue. And the process and the reason why we did this constitution was, in fact, that's the mischief that we were trying to cure. And it took us 20 plus years to do so. And I don't know whether you sort of would recall that immediately this constitution was ready, there was a workshop held at KIA by the government, the people who are in government then, and they proposed over 200 amendments to the constitution. I mean, it was there were so many amendments that it became quite clear that what they were trying to do is repeal the constitution by amendment. So that is why we looking at what is going on in the country. We're looking at the number of constitutional amendments that have already been proposed since this constitution was enacted, including some which are live in parliament at the moment. We feel that Kenya probably needs this kind of jurisprudence.
So basically, you're going to court to seek the court's intervention in protecting the people from themselves.
It is not protecting the people from themselves, but protecting what the people. You see, our constitution, I think, and if you go to our constitution is very clear. It speaks the language of it is called progressive. It speaks the language of being transformational, being aspirational. So that kind of constitution means that it is something which society sets as something which is going to transform society over time, to deal with certain problems that the society knows that it has. Now, the fact that the constitution is like that, it is because we know ourselves. If you look again where this comes from South Africa, for instance, with its history of apartheid, when they also passed what they said is a transformative constitution, said, look, we are not going to change overnight. We are going to change. We passed a constitution which set a very high bar, and then we reform ourselves to reach that bar.
Yeah.
But human nature is that our instinct is to slip back. Okay? So it is true. We know what, so if you draw that parallel, we have set a constitution which sets a very high bar, and we are supposed to push ourselves towards that direction.
Right.
Now, you know that one of the things we did is we set a very high bar of Chapter 6, and immediately we slipped back. Because of certain political exigencies. So it is not protecting the people from themselves, but it is pushing the people forward and putting a ratchet so that we don't backslide.
Right. Let's take a break here.
Of preventing ourselves from backsliding.
From backsliding. Let's take a break here. We're speaking with economist, columnist, and author Dr. David Njeri and active citizen Cherotich Sei. Let's take a break here on the Situation Room, which is Kenya's biggest conversation at 25 minutes to 9. We want to look at the weather and traffic, and then this conversation continues. Post your comments and your questions on our social media handles, Spice FM KE, Twitter and Facebook. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life.
Still overcast in Nairobi at 17 degrees. We'll see highs of 26 today, coming down then to lows of 13 later. Looking then into Njeri weather, where it's cloudy this morning, mostly cloudy conditions at 16, highs of 24 and lows of 14, mostly sunny in Nakuru at 16, going to highs of 25 and coming down to lows of 11. It's mostly sunny in Eldoret as well for the meantime. There are expected showers later with highs of 22 and lows of 12. Sunny conditions in Kisumu at 22, going to highs of 29 and lows of 19. Sunny conditions in Kakamega as well. Showers expected later, going to highs of 27 and lows of 15. It's mostly cloudy in Mombasa at 25, going to highs of 28 and lows of 24 with showers expected to come back from the morning showers that we had. All right, looking at Malindi, it's mostly cloudy at 25, highs of 28 and lows of 24. Showers expected to come back as well. Kampala's partly cloudy at 21 degrees, going to highs of 27 and lows of 18. And in Dar es Salaam, it's patches of fog as we expect, 25 currently, expecting to open up into showers later with highs of 31 and lows of 22. It's mostly sunny in Joburg at 14. It'll go to highs of 26 and lows of 13. And wrapping things up in Lagos for now, it's partly cloudy at 30, and it'll come down to lows of 23.
Traffic.
Okay, still looking good on Thika Road. Getting into the CBD won't be too terrible this morning. We see that good traffic conditions, at least for most parts of the city. Let's look at Mombasa Road. We're coming out of Mombasa Road, going towards the Nyayo Stadium roundabout. That's where we have the hold up on Uhuru Highway, as is usual this morning, and the industrial area because of the road closure. So nothing major out of the ordinary. That accident that happened along Tindwa is still being sorted out. So for now, anyone coming in from Donholm and then heading out, trying to get to the CBD using that area is going to have a bit of a hard time until that is sorted. All right, let us know where you might be stuck. Spice FM KE, that's how you can reach us on Twitter. But for now, guys, all looks really good.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM,
This
Nairobi.
conversation continues on Spice FM, broadcasting from Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu, Nakuru, Eldoret, Nyeri, Malindi, worldwide on www.spicefm.co.ke and on our social media handles, Spice FM KE on YouTube, Facebook and Twitter. This hour, we are looking at a constitution conversation, because even as the president said, it's about time we started looking at this constitution. So let's discuss the Katiba, okay? There are 5 Kenyans who have gone to court seeking interpretation and determination of the court. And this is Ikala Ngelei, Wajiro Gekonyo, James Gondi, Cherotich Sei, and Dr. David Day. And they've gone to court seeking interpretation, and especially on doctrines and principles of, there are some things that are the cost and basic structure of the Constitution. And if we start tinkering with those in any way, then we are basically repealing this constitution. Maybe we should, protect them. And that's what we are discussing in this hour. CT Muga, Nduh Okoh, Eric Latiff, and Dr. Ndei and Sei. CT, you've got a question?
Yes. This name written clearly Ndih, how is it pronounced again?
Ask him.
Daktari, how is your name pronounced? I do not wish to call you by a name which isn't yours.
That will do. The name is pronounced Day.
Day. All right. Now I've got it. Now, There is on page 17 of the Standard a tweet that is attributed to you. It says, our petition is not about the BBI and makes no mention of the BBI. It seeks to establish a judicial principle that will protect the Constitution from mutilation now and in the future. Lovely statement. I like it. What is this judicial principle?
The one that the President has just talked about, that the Constitution has a basic structure that should not be interfered with by amendments. As I said, if you really want to repeal the Constitution, then you need a process of repeal. You do not use amendments as a Trojan horse for repealing the Constitution and putting in place another one. For instance, if that jurisprudence existed at independence, I think it would have prevented the amendment which created an office of Imperial President for Jomo Kenyatta.
And by extension, it would have guaranteed that the Majimbo system would also not have been extinguished.
Exactly.
Okay.
So now tell us then why you pick on these specific clauses and chapters of the Constitution. For example, Chapter 1 on sovereignty of the people and supremacy of the Constitution. Why would you consider this a basic structure?
Well, you cannot convert Kenya into a monarchy. That's what we are. If you can, but not under this Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the people are sovereign. I think that is very fundamental. They are also, devolution is also follows very quickly. I think in Article 2 or 3 that there are two levels of government in Kenya. I think national and county governments.
Yeah.
So I think if one wants to introduce a different level, I think that would be debated there. It doesn't mean, let me say, once you put these things, the nature of this interpretation that we're seeking, what it does not mean that amendments cannot be proposed, but it gives people who think, it gives people a basis for debating whether those amendments are valid. So what we have now is we have a constitution, but we have not the one in which anything goes. You can amend. You can amend everything. And as you know, the Constitution, as we argue in the petition, it exists as a whole. So it is possible for somebody to look for a vulnerability where they are looking for a weakness. You know, you look at where can I poke, sort of, which is a weak point, and you say you're only amending one or two clauses, but really what you're doing is looking for a weakness that will bring the whole structure down. Yeah. So what this does is, if amendments are proposed, it is possible for people to go to court subsequent after this, if our case goes through, and say, look, the amendments that are opposed actually offend the basic structure of the Constitution, or people are using constitutional provisions to do unconstitutional amendments, stuff like that, so that the court has something to work with.
And so what would the person be going to court to seek the court's intervention on? If it's still allowed that you can propose amendments to these particular chapters, but they are basic
there's
structure.
Nothing to stop you. There's nothing to stop you from, at this moment, for introducing a state religion. Okay? And if you introduce a state religion, and the majority of people voted for it in a popular process, as has been attempted to do other things, the courts would have no option but to accept that we introduce a state religion.
At the risk of repetition, if I can just, so what essentially you're saying here is that it's not that you can't change the Constitution, but if you want to change, if there are any changes that you want to bring about for whatever reason, then you must do this by, being public about it, number one. And number two, you must go to the relevant authorities and with the knowledge of the people to make sure that you bring about those changes with everybody's visibility on it.
No. We are saying there are some things that you cannot take out, and there are some things you cannot put in.
Okay.
For instance, you cannot put in state religion. Okay? As of now, the process provided for by the Constitution leaves the gap that you can introduce a state religion. Okay? So you're saying, since there are people who might be tempted to introduce a state religion, and Kenya is overwhelmingly Christian and oppressive, there is a gap through which oppressive constitutional amendments can be introduced. Can come through. We saw, for instance, we have seen this thing called 1 man, 1 shilling. It completely offends the public finance principles of the Constitution. Yeah, because we have said in the Constitution that one of the grievances that we were addressing was the marginalization and exclusion. And we therefore put in provisions, what you call directive principles, that public money should be used to bring about an equitable society. Now, and we have seen people openly saying we are going to reverse this. So right now there's nothing to stop them from doing so.
I want to bring in... Go ahead. Sorry.
I think if this petition of ours goes through and you try and do something like that, it means when somebody goes to court and say this sort of thing offends a very fundamental thing about the Constitution, which is actually a Bill of Rights, and then you are stopped at the gates.
But there's nothing at all that, even in your petition, that stops the people of Kenya from repealing this Constitution.
No,
not at all.
None
but
at all.
You cannot use it. But you cannot use the same Constitution to repeal it. The Constitution does not provide for provisions for repeal.
It doesn't. So it doesn't foresee its death.
Pardon me?
It doesn't foresee its death.
No, it doesn't foresee its death.
Okay. So, yes, Jero, you were to say something.
No, when I think about it and I say in simple terms for Kenya, and as an active citizen who tries and break into bite-size or understandable sizes what's going on, for those who will be out there told that this is an anti-BBI petition, we need to find I was thinking, how do we simply explain it to Kenya? The Constitution, Articles 255 to 257, would allow for minor amendments. These are minor amendments that are supposed to help us better achieve certain articles or aspects of the Constitution that could have done with a bit of tweaking or a bit of correction, or that would allow us to engage in a larger change, like a bit of an elaboration. But these are minor. They exist within the framework of this Constitution as is. And what we are trying to say is we do not want a situation where people overstep the minor nature of their power to amend and force us into spaces that completely and ultimately undermine the Constitution of Kenya. So we are saying this is to safeguard the Constitution of Kenya. And anybody out there who is thinking of using the pathway of amendment to tamper with our sovereignty as the people of Kenya, even by using the same people of Kenya to go out and vote in a popular initiative, we are saying, no, you cannot do that.
But if I look at the Constitution itself, and because there's an entire chapter on how you can amend this Constitution, 255 already says you can amend the Constitution, but it ring-fences some clauses and chapters and says this ones can only be amended by, via referendum. That is, by everybody participating in that process. And if a majority approve, then it's fine. And these are some of the ones that you're actually putting forth in the petition. Supremacy of the Constitution, the territory of Kenya, sovereignty of the people, values, principles of governance according to Article 10.2, and then the Bill of Rights, term of the President, independence of the judiciary and commissions, independent offices, functions of Parliament, object, principles, and structures of devolved government and the provisions of this particular chapter itself. If we want to amend 255, we must go through a referendum. So just using that argument, don't you say that the drafters of this particular constitution already saw what you are raising, and those are legitimate fears, that, you know, we could have a way in which a process by which this constitution is completely mutilated and looks something completely different within another 10 years' time, by saying that if you want anything like that, use the people. The supremacy of the people says that they are the ones who shall determine what changes in these particular clauses. Now, by listening to your petition and your argument, you're saying that let's go even further and say that even if the people went and unanimously voted, 99.99% in a referendum voted to change Chapter 1, some aspects of Chapter 1, that would still be wrong, because Chapter 1 is the basic structure and it should not be amended unless you're bringing a whole new constitution and call it Constitution of Kenya 2020.
You got it right. And Dr. Ndei has already elaborated a bit earlier on about the bad habit that we have of trying to amend or bring in fundamental changes via amendments. And you're absolutely right. At the end of the day, if any of these amendments move beyond the minor, the ameliorating, to a space where we are fundamentally altering what it means to be we the people, then it doesn't matter whether the people vote in a referendum or not, we still say no. And we as the people, because we are not sitting outside of the people, we are part of we the people of the Republic of Kenya, we say no. And that's why we're seeking guidance. And we're saying what jurisprudentially, how do we move forward with this? And I like what Dr. Ndei also says, with this petition, depending on the outcome, it can always be used going forward. And people can quote it as case law to say, this is why we cannot allow the following amendment to happen. So if, for example, the famous, infamous BBI says we want a prime minister, we want to alter the judiciary thus, or we want to alter the executive in this way or that way, or we want to tamper with devolution, are those minor amendments or major? And if they are major, is the amendment route the route to take? Or do we seek a completely different way of reviewing, repealing this current constitution, going back to the drawing board? So we are not allowing stealthy and sneaky ways of bringing in fundamental changes and then hiding it behind the fact that people came out and 99.9% said yes.
But
let me step in there,
yes,
and elaborate. I think we are complicating something which is not. If we stop talking law and technicalities and talk politics, we have this constitution. We passed this constitution of struggle, saying we want to go this way as a country. We want to become democratic, equitable, blah blah blah, all sorts of things. Now, there are people who don't agree with us. Don't forget, said we are going forward, and there are people who say we should go backwards. Okay?
Yep.
And we're saying that the people of Kenya agreed to go forward. Okay? But the fact they agreed to go forward, it was not without a struggle. Okay?
Yep.
Now, we also, the court, the constitution gave the court, we gave the courts the power to improve the constitution. Okay? Or by things like this. Because whatever declarations of the Supreme Court, of the courts, of the constitutional courts, become part of the Constitution. So you're saying, look, we want to make sure that people will not whip up popular emotions to take the country backwards. It is quite possible. You know, constitutions in a democracy, the purpose of constitutions in democracy is to restrain power. So what we are doing here is to improve the constitution by preventing people using constitution to abuse power. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Because there are people who definitely want to take us backwards. Yeah? And that struggle is always there in society. In the U.S., even today, there are people who are against equality of black and white people.
Dr. Nduh, when you talk
200
about
years
this,
later.
when you talk about the abuse of power, and just going to what Charity said earlier about now making it understandable for people to see what's really going on here, could you look at what are the dangers then of not taking this into consideration? And I'm talking about Kenyans at large. What are the dangers of not putting in those safeguards to make sure that, for example, that there's no abuse of power? Because most times you can't see something until you see what threat it is to you as a people. What are the dangers then of not putting these safeguards in place from where you see it?
That's what we're saying. What is it that in Kenya, in the Constitution, what political fight, what did we settle with the Constitution? We have settled structure. Okay?
Yep.
So we're saying structure, values, the various things, the fact that we want a constitutional aspiration, not a minimalist one. Yeah? There are very many things that we have settled.
Right.
Okay?
Yep.
Now, we did not put in a process of saying there's an amendment, there's a proposed amendment offend those things. Okay? Like, for instance, the German Constitution, which was done after World War II, given where they were coming from, Nazism, they put in democracy as an eternity clause. You cannot amend that clause in the German Constitution. It's called an eternity clause. Okay? So given where society is coming from, we're saying 10 years after the Constitution, we passed the Constitution, we are learning, we have observed that there have been many, many attempts to take us backward. Because there are people who benefited from the system we had before, and they are still resisting in sort of the progressive changes that the Constitution
Provides.
envisaged, and the people of Kenya envisaged. That's why you are hearing people saying, what we need is the Constitution being implemented.
Yep.
Okay. So what we're saying is that we have seen the need for a ratchet, so that when we make progress, elected people don't come and then push us backward, so that we'll be forever taking one step forward, two steps back, and we are backsliding. So that when we make progress, we ratchet it. When we make progress, we ratchet it. Yeah?
Yep.
So what we are safeguarding against is dishonesty. That there are people who grudgingly accepted that this is where society ought to go on a values basis.
Sorry to cut you short here, Dr. Nduh. We'll continue this conversation, but let's just take another quick break, and we'll be back shortly. We are speaking with Dr. David Nduh, economist, columnist, and author, and active citizen. Charity, these two and three others have gone to court seeking the court's intervention and interpretation on safeguarding some clauses and aspects of the Constitution. And what they are explaining is, let's look at it from the political process and from the political side of things. There are some things that, well, if we change, then we're basically changing the entire structure of the Constitution. We want to continue this conversation and ask now for your feedback, your questions to Dr. Nduh and Ms. Say. If you've got any questions, 0719-012-600 or our social media platform, of course, Spice FM KE on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. CT, as we go to the top of the hour, today's proverb.
A man who is wealthy may wear an old cloth. In these African sayings, unless you make them gender sensitive, they're all about men.
Yeah.
Well, once in a while, they bring in some gender parity. Once in a long while.
A person who's wealthy
may wear an old cloth.
An old cloth.
Yes.
It's a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. 0719-012-600, Spice FM KE, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. This conversation continues in the next hour. The 5 people have gone to court and they are asking, look, let's ring fence some of these chapters of the Constitution and say they form the basic structure of the Constitution. You amend this, you're offending the basic structure of the Constitution. If you want to amend this, just repeal this Constitution and bring a new one. But don't say that you're amending this Constitution if you change this particular structure. Good morning. It's now 9 o'clock.
spice up your life. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi. Traffic.
Okay, traffic situation much better in most parts of Nairobi this morning. Let's take a quick look into Mombasa. We know that there's a lot of construction going on within the town. This has affected traffic, Mariakani in that area, getting into the city centre, right around Moi Avenue as well. All in the hope to have Mombasa beautiful again. So here we are waiting, and in that moment, really waiting in traffic, but it will not be too long. Kisumu outbound, quite a lot of traffic this morning. It's the weekend, so that is understandable, but nothing too painful at the moment. Nakuru, when we look at it this morning, right in the middle of town, in and outbound of Nakuru town, there is an issue today. It's moving very slowly, but it will not be too terrible from what we see. Okay? All right. In Nairobi, once again, Uhuru Highway to Westlands, we expect holdups of traffic for another 30 minutes or so coming into the CBD from Mombasa Road as well. Will give us that bit of a problem. But again, we'll be able to make it. Spice FM KE. That's how you can reach us on Twitter, just in case.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Nduh Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
2.5 minutes past 9, and the conversation continues. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, Spice FM. Spice FM KE, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. You can pose your questions or even your comments right there, and we will be sharing them with our guests this morning, Chero Titsei and Dr. Devin Day. Chero, as we went to the break, Dr. Day was explaining, I mean, this is about, let's look at what this constitution is a result of. It's a result of a lot of work that went into trying to bring ourselves to a level where Kenyans express their aspirations and they put them in the supreme law of the republic. The supreme law also says that the sovereignty of Kenyans are sovereign, and the sovereignty will be exercised by the people through their elected representatives or directly. The Constitution also provides for these amendments, and where the people, there are some clauses which says the people must unanimously agree, or at least by a majority agree that this is the way to go. Now, when I listened to the debate this morning, I am agreeing to some extent with the debate, but something at the back of my mind is telling me it's sort of like if your petition went through and it was actually agreed on by the judiciary, we'll be creating an imperial constitution. A constitution that we created, but then it tells us you cannot touch me going forward because I don't trust that you'll have the ability, wherewithal, or even the goodwill when you are trying to amend me. Yet, we had the wherewithal and goodwill when we were creating it. It's like saying that this constitution then tells you that if you want to question your own sovereignty, you cannot question it because you told me 10 years ago that you're sovereign. If you want to question your structure of government, 10 years ago you said this, but you once you said it, you cannot change your mind. Is that not going against the same principle of people exercising their sovereignty? Chero.
I think there are definitely pathways to achieve the changes that we, the people, would want to achieve. And what we're trying to say is the sneaky utilization of the amendment route is what we do not want, because it has been overused, misused, and abused, and moved away from the aspect or the element of minor corrections to ameliorate and into the realm of deeper, more nefarious fundamental shifts. So it is not that we, the people, cannot amend our constitution or cannot look for pathways to even repeal the whole thing, but saying, let us use the correct pathway, and this is not it.
What are these pathways, if I may ask? I know you've mentioned it. Just mention it again. I'm a little slow this morning, so when you first mentioned it, it sort of like passed me by.
No, but Dr. Njeri, and I think he can jump in here as well, had said that, look, if you want to repeal, then use the repeal process. Don't repeal via amendment.
Let me jump in. I think there's also, you have to sort of put this in always in context about law. Very often, law is to cure certain mischiefs that are there in society.
Yep.
So, when we say that we passed a constitution for eternity, there is a reason for that. Yeah. Now, let me draw again an example. When the U.S. passed the constitution with that famous place called "All Men Are Created Equal," they had slavery. Okay.
Yep.
And even today, that society is still trying to achieve that aspiration.
Right.
But what they could not say is what existed at the time, because it was based on moral value, moral content. What existed at the time that one race was superior to the other. South Africa did, quite not too long ago, in the 1940s, have a constitution which recognized that races are unequal. Okay? So, if we abstract too much from the reality of society, we say that, we are creating an imperial constitution. Yes, constitutions are, when the societies conceive them as eternal. The democratic constitutions, societies conceive them as eternal. And what we're saying is that we believe that they represent the social contract, as I said, of the people of Kenya. But there are certain political struggles within society that will continue to exist. And what we cannot do is use the process created by the Constitution. We cannot weaponize democracy, that is what it is. You cannot weaponize democracy to undermine the Constitution. In a nutshell, that's what you're saying. What you're saying, or democratize the sort of processes such as participation and all sorts of things, and you say we have ticked all these boxes, and therefore we can introduce state religion into the Constitution. Or we can abolish Islam, practice of Islam in Kenya.
But why not, David Day, if the people decide that this is the new route? You see, 10 years ago, when we were going to a referendum in August, and having read the Constitution, the draft Constitution that we had given to ourselves, we hoped that it would serve us well. There were things that we put in that Constitution, we the people, and we believed that this is the best way for us to go. 10 years or 15 years or 25 years down the road, we are faced with new realities, and those new realities of our time tell us, you know what, that decision that we made 25 years ago has probably not served us well. It has led us to deeper problems than we thought we were getting out of. So let's change that. And that's the whole principle of amending a constitution.
No, it is not. There are principles, there are values, there are known, there's moral content. There's moral content in the Constitution. Okay? We are creatures of reason. Okay?
Yep.
So we are saying that we should have a framework of reasoning when certain changes in the constitutions are contemplated, so that we can debate and decide whether those changes are in the best interest of society. And the institution that we have given the responsibility for moral reasoning is the judiciary. Okay? So we cannot use, we are saying we should preclude the possibility of using a purely mechanistic process and saying we have ticked all the boxes and put in the Constitution something which is morally repugnant.
Dr. Ndai, let me ask this. The eternity clause you mentioned, is it the same thing as, that is often referred to as an entrenchment clause or something? Are they the same thing?
Yes.
Now,
Yes.
if you look at the countries where this has been applied, as you said correctly with reference to the United States and Germany, there was a very fundamental reason.
The U.S. doesn't. I just mentioned Germany, it has one entrenchment clause, one eternity clause.
Yes. I was mentioning the U.S. as an example that you gave, that the background to the initial statement, all men are created equal, because they were unequal to begin with. But in Germany, you do have an entrenchment clause, and the other countries in the world, in Africa, we have Algeria, we have Egypt. But the point, what I'm trying to ask here is this. The entrenchment laws make it absolutely difficult. In some cases, they make it impossible for you to change that law. But now, coming back to Kenya, how exactly do you see the changes that seem to be favored and furthered by a politician? How do you see it taking us back to an imperial presidency or a monarchy, as you called it?
Again, as someone mentioned the tweet which I said, look, we are not anticipating what what changes people may bring, but we know we are capable of political mischief. We have already seen in our affidavit, we have a long list of proposed amendments since the Constitution was enacted. None of them has gone through. Some of them are still live in Parliament. Quite a few of them have a lot of mischief in it. So you're saying we are not perfect, and we know that. Okay, we have passed an aspirational constitution. People fall short of their aspirations all the time, and they slip back. So what we're saying is let us improve our constitutionalism. Let us improve our constitutionalism by having a process that will arbitrate whether a proposed amendment, whether popular or not, however popular, is consistent with the values, with the promise we made ourselves. Is this a case of us going forward, or is it a case of us going backward? Are we backsliding, or are we going forward? All we are saying is that let us have, asking the judiciary, allow us to have a criteria by which we will evaluate proposed constitutional amendments, so that we protect those things that we believe are dear and the spirit of why we enacted this new constitution against our worst nature as people.
So essentially the background is we have already seen mischief, not just imputed, but actually practiced by people who are supposed to be our lawmakers and the protectors of the Constitution. So not to sleep on our own guards, you want to ensure that there are mechanisms that guarantee that this path that some people seem to have determined to follow doesn't go the way they have thought it. Is that what I understand you to be saying?
It's a very good to put things bluntly. Take, for instance, the parliamentary process.
Yep.
We know that it is possible to intimidate or even bribe the entire legislature.
That's true.
Okay?
Yep.
And if the legislature is corrupted and intimidated, it can pass morally repugnant amendments to the Constitution. We want to be able to go that. Then you have a problem, because the Parliament is a lawmaking body, and the judiciary, we say Parliament having made the law, there's nothing we can do. You can say it's unconstitutional, but it's a constitutional amendment, so it is now constitutional for us to chop people's heads off. Okay, so you're saying no, the higher standard. The higher standard is that in passing this constitution in 2010, this is the kind of society Kenyans wanted. And what you people are attempting to do offends that in a very, very fundamental way. So we cannot, it is unconstitutional by virtue of the direction that will be given if our petition goes through. And that is how it is used. That is how the basic structure jurisprudence is used in India, where it's used a lot, because there are always people who are trying to do the same thing. But when you think about the Indian society, there's the same issues: religion, caste, all manner of things that majorities can use to oppress minorities.
That is a very...
And that we are saying we have certain elements of the same things in societies where we see this, and we are therefore asking that we introduce the same remedies that those societies have used to protect constitutionalism in their countries.
City has actually called it before, and it calls it lived experience. In our lived experience, in our short history as a Republic of Kenya, we have seen one constitution get mutilated in a span of what? Was it just 20 years? Between 64 and 81? It completely looked different from what came back from Lancaster. We have that. We already have elements in our political class who have expressly demonstrated their unwillingness to abide by this constitution. So, of course, giving them an opportunity to tinker with it, they will run with it. And we have also seen how politicians use the populace to champion causes that are in their own personal interest and not in the interest of the public. And this is what we're even discussing in the 7 o'clock hour. Public interest versus politicians' own selfish interests. So it's a very interesting conversation. We want to open up the phone lines now. Any comments or questions? Just hold on, Chero. So we have a caller on the line, and this is the Honorable Shakil Shabir. Good morning, Mheshimiwa.
Good morning. I was in the Constitution CKRC when we set up, and we worked through a number of years on from 1997 on the issue of the Constitution. I mean, 1997 was not the Constitution review, but the earlier movements. Yes, IPPG and others. Now, one of the major problems that we first met and we first decided on what are we going to do about the Constitution that will not be mutilated, and where the values of Kenya and the values of the Republic will be maintained at all times, so that we do not go back to the 1963-64 debacle. So as David Day is saying, there are certain pillars of the Constitution that cannot be touched, even by way of a referendum. What we will need to do is to go either repeal the whole Constitution and go back and say that, listen, these are the pillars that we feel are wrong at this moment in time in this 22nd 2022 century. But we cannot do it piecemeal. That is my first intervention. My second one, and people have been talking about two tiers of government. We had 2 tiers of government. It was mutilated in Navasha. The 2 tiers of government were the provincial government and the national government. And then under the provincial government, there were going to be district executive mayors or whatever. You see, the only problem is that we've allowed our constitution to be mutilated in Kilifi, in Navasha, and the same people who are now going for BBI are the same people who mutilated the constitution in Navasha.
In the recent history, in the last 15 years.
Yes. I mean, the 2000 and after the constitution was proposed, the draft, the Kilifi draft, then it went to Navasha, and Navasha was very clear on how the government was going to, what was the structure of government. It was mutilated. And they came up with 47 governors and et cetera, et cetera. In Parliament, there were about 10 of us who were fighting this. Martha Karua was one, I was another, and we were walking out every time there was amendment. But obviously we were outnumbered. So what we are trying to say is this: the BBI is a tweaking. Maybe we can allow tweaking, but we cannot allow basic fundamental changes in the Constitution.
Thank you very much.
That's my take.
Thank you very much. That's the Honorable Shakil Shabir, the MP for Kisumu East constituency. 0719-012-600. Join this conversation. Let's hear what your thoughts are. We know that people have gone to court and they're saying, well, and this is we have 2 of the 5 that have gone to court asking the court's intervention. Cheryl, before we pick Shakil Shabir's call, you wanted to come in with a comment.
Yes, I wanted to just further illustrate and I do agree 100% with Mheshimiwa who called in, and the idea that there's the essential and core features of the Constitution that are these basic building blocks and should not be tampered with. And we have what we have. It was promulgated. If we want to change it, then we know what we need to do. But I wanted to bring in an example that I had raised at the very beginning of the show, which is a medical equipment leasing scheme. And this whole process where to date, when you talk about the tens of billions of shillings that have disappeared in criminal activity, one of the things that struck me most when I read that report is that every one of the 47 counties of Kenya have paid 619 million shillings each in the past 5 years. Now, these millions that they have paid to lease this equipment would have been paid out of the coffers of the county government. But there was a circumvention of that, and none of these counties ever saw this money. This money was paid directly through Ministry of Health to the contractors. Now, this flies in the face of public procurement, of finance management, and also devolved government, Article 187, and the functions of devolved governments and what their autonomy is. Now, what if somebody decided that this is a very pesky thing, this aspect of say, Article 187, and want to alter it and change it, so that going forward, even though we have a devolved system of government, you can centralize certain functions.
Yep.
Now, wouldn't that be interfering with the essential and core feature of the Constitution of Kenya 2010 with regard or with respect to devolution? And this is what we are, and so this is an example which is actually very separate from the BBI discussion. What if somebody went in and amended and made it possible to circumvent devolution? And do we still have devolution? Is that a minor tweak, a minor amendment, or are you fundamentally affecting what it means to say we have a devolved government? And these are some of the things we want to safeguard against, these cheeky or whimsical or nefarious or even criminal attempts to alter the Constitution willy-nilly. And worse still, when you popularize it in a populist manner and make the people think that they are the ones who want these changes.
Thank you. Let's go back to the phone lines. Barry calling in from Nairobi. Good morning, Barry.
Good morning, Eric. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
I think the first thing first, I don't know how I can join that petition. It makes so much sense for me, let me tell you. Because one, the purpose of a constitution is not to appease to the whims and desires of the majority, but to protect the minority from tyranny of the same majority. That's what causes justice in any society. Now, if the constitution does not, like you see, if we now to leave the constitution like in the context of this country, the constitution does not define a system of mobilization. So are we saying that we can sit here and allow someone to mobilize the society even in an illegal way, maybe through religion, through class, or through tribe, and propose what seems to be a popular amendment to the detriment of the very minority who are still members of this society? I mean, that can't be allowed. From my standing, I believe that constitutions are meant to protect the minority, not the majority. So any measure that is meant to prevent the constitution from the mischief, especially of the political class and the larger and the powerful members of society, that is so welcome for me. Thank you, guys.
Asante sana. 0719-012-600. Join the conversation. Dr. Ndei, how can Barry support your petition?
I think that we'll look at that. We will look at that. I think people can always. It is possible for people to enjoy themselves in petitions. I am not a lawyer, so we will seek guidance from lawyers how that can happen. Because I think it is also important that if other citizens, like he feel strongly that this is something they want to be part of, I think probably there should be an opening. But we'll find out.
It's interesting that he has mentioned that, because just as Barry has said, how can I join? Then it makes me realize that there are a lot of Kenyans, a lot of people who may not actually realize, who may not actually understand exactly what is going on. And until something like this comes to the light is when they might actually now put their thinking caps on and say, all right, this could be happening as we sit back and watch. In terms of information spreading for something that seems to be quite difficult to understand for a lot of people, or may not even have the time to sit down and go through it, processes like this, apart from this petition, wouldn't it be, how important rather, would you see that being in terms of getting Kenyans rallying around a knowledge base and understanding of what is really going on with the laws of the country?
Let me say, from my experience, as Shabi was saying, I've been in this for a long. We went through constitution making for a very, very long time. This is one of the longest, and there has been so much civic education in Kenya. So comparatively, Kenyans tend to be very alive to these issues. Which is why you are seeing all this sort of interest. And in fact, this petition, the spirit of it, I think, from our perspective, is to bring that about, to bring that development. We saw these jurisprudence and said, look, we have the same problems as these societies which have adopted this.
Right.
Yeah. We use the language of tyranny of numbers. Now, constitutionalism is in fact, as the gentleman said before, constitutionalism is a safeguard against tyranny of numbers. And the way that we have drafted, even though we have provisions of clauses which are protected, are ring-fenced, and can only be passed by referendum, it is not insulated against tyranny of numbers. As that gentleman has said, he was very clear, politicians or other forces can mobilize religion, they can mobilize ethnicity, and then use the tyranny of numbers to undermine our constitutionalism. All we are saying is that by adopting this jurisprudence, this principle, it doesn't have to be written in the Constitution. It says part of our constitutional amendment process will include evaluating whether it offends the basic structure of the Constitution. That is the only innovation that we want to introduce, so that you can go ahead, but you know that your amendment will be audited. It will be audited to ensure that it is not mischief, that it is actually doing what the Constitution already says, that any amendments or even any rulings are to actually improve the Constitution in the direction that we have said we want to go, which is very clearly set out in Chapter 1.
Going back to the phone lines, 0719-012-600. Amani in Nairobi, good morning.
Good morning, Eric. Good morning, Nduh. Good morning, CT. How are you guys?
We're very well, thank you.
Great conversation as usual. I just have two comments or contributions. And that is, the first one is the first segment of the politician. And then I'll come to this current segment.
Okay.
For the politician, it was about academic qualifications. And I felt that that is not the only absolute condition. When you look at the American Senate or House of Representatives, you have people of all ranges in terms of educational backgrounds, from truck drivers to policemen to lawyers, etc. So I think what's important for a politician is to have the necessary researchers and consultants, not necessarily professional consultants. They can consult widely within the community, especially the community leaders, in terms of understanding what is required of them in terms of their work and what they need to deliver to the people. So I think that's important for any politician, regardless of your academic qualifications.
Good point.
Yeah, and then now on this particular issue of the interrogation of the Constitution and the changes, I think this is very important what this petition is doing, because the Constitution is such an important document. It cannot be taken lightly. It cannot be left solely to the politicians. And therefore, it is necessary for the civic society and the general wananchi to interrogate it in such a way that the issues are brought out as to what the pros and cons are of making any changes, so that people are making informed decisions about what needs to be done. It may be that we don't need this, or yes, this is okay, we can do this part, but not the other part, because it compromises the entire Constitution if we change, let's say, Article A, B, C, or X, Y, Z. So I think this is very important, and this discussion you're having is absolutely critical. So please continue with it, because we need it. And good luck to everybody.
Thank you very much, Amani. 0719-012-600. You want to join the conversation? Also, Spice FM KE on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Let's go to Njeri. Simon is calling in. Good morning, Simon.
Good morning, Latiff.
How are you doing? Welcome to the Situation Room today.
Well, thank you very much. And I'm quite privileged to come back to you again from yesterday. My MP was there some time ago, some hours ago, and he talked about the difference between academic qualifications and lack of it, for that matter. And to a certain degree, I agree with him, because in order for one to hone the charismatic leadership that is required largely in politics, one has to at least go through some technical bit of education, so that, including the diplomatic part of it. However, there is the charismatic element that is actually hereditary. And such people, when they get into leadership with commitment, they become very good leaders.
Yeah.
And I think for the purpose of catering for that is why members of parliament have been given big offices with research departments, so that they can be able to bring in all sorts of the resources, the requisite resources that they require to facilitate their jobs.
I hate to interrupt you, Simon. What do you have to say about the current conversation, which is the petition, on safeguarding aspects of the Constitution, such that if you want to amend them, then just like Dr. David Ndei and Ms. Cherotich Sei are saying, you've got to ensure that it's taken through a proper audit, so that we safeguard the Constitution against mischief?
Well, there is a certain element to it that is noble. Because if we allow a section of the people to mutilate the Constitution every time they require to do so, on some of it on personal means, we shall end up having no Constitution at all. However, there is a danger to going towards that direction, because once the waters are tested and they are found to be soft, we again invite a barrage of such amendments through one arm of government, that is the judiciary. I am quite aware of the jurisprudence that are common all over the world in terms of making the Constitution amenable. But we cannot actually make the Constitution through the judiciary.
Okay. Let's get the feedback from our guests, Dr. Ndei and Ms. Sei. What do you say to that? He's saying, look, the other danger of that is now by saying that some of these amendments have got to go to the judiciary, and if the judiciary concurs, then you can go ahead. You're now introducing the judiciary as an arm of amending the Constitution.
That is not quite correct. Judiciary has no power of initiating anything. Judiciary waits for things to be taken to them. Like we have taken. So you can see judiciary as the place minority will go if the majority try and use the tyranny of numbers against them. As someone said, so the judiciary, the only way that judiciary makes law is when cases are brought to them and they rule in a particular manner. And the reason why that becomes law is, again, even constitutional law, is again because people don't have perfect foresight. When we were writing the Constitution, we could not foresee everything that will be relevant in the future. And then you cannot then be, again, amending the Constitution all the time to take care of circumstances. And that is why that is the merit of using our power of reason in a tempered manner. But certainly the judiciary cannot initiate constitutional amendments, but cases can be taken to it where using the time-tested and all sorts of other accepted processes and rules, they can have they become part of you, the body of your constitutionalism. I think there is no perfect way. There is no perfect way because you cannot be updating the Constitution every 5 years. There is no alternative other than the fact that there will be unanticipated things. For instance, we've just had a pandemic, which will probably shape the way we look at certain things going forward.
Yeah.
You could not have anticipated that before. So that there might be something coming out of that which will change our laws, perhaps even something with constitutional implications.
Well, thank you very much for the conversation and your insights this morning. And as we conclude the conversation, Dr. Njeri, what would you tell Kenyans to do in order to remain vigilant in protecting the Constitution and the democracy? What is it that people ought to do?
We must resist being mobilized on the basis of sort of political emotions on the here and now, particularly on the basis of ethnicity, to undermine things that we have sort of stated that we hold dear. We must resist following individuals blindly. I am quite sort of surprised at seeing that people are prepared to reduce the constitutional or at least to instrumentalize the constitution for power politics. Only a decade after we had to enact a new constitution, partly as a result of the 2007, even though we had started before. So I think what really we would urge Kenyans to do is to be sober, and to really engage the things that we are. For instance, why we brought this petition. When BBI does come, and we hope that this may have gone through, that we if look at it soberly. If there are constitutional amendments proposed, let us look at them soberly.
Thank you very much. Charity Say, what would you say?
I would end by encouraging as many Kenyans as possible to be active citizens, because when we are active citizens, then we are not passive recipients of information that tells us what to do, when to do, and how to do it. And the other thing I would like to say is that the wording of our petition, when we talk about seeking the court's intervention to immunize certain chapters of the Constitution, what is immunization? It means that the disease is around. It's not eradicated. It's not like smallpox that was eradicated. You're looking at diseases that are prevalent, but we're looking to immunize, for example, children so that they don't catch that disease. In the same way, we are seeking to immunize these chapters, because the disease, and in this case, the disease of willy-nilly nefarious attempts to alter the Constitution, we know that it will always be there. There will always be things, whether it's BBI, whether it's other things, there will be factors and politics at play trying to influence the Constitution. And we are seeking that immunization so that we can protect some core chapters that, if altered, would change the fundamental nature of the Constitution of Kenya 2010.
Dr. David Day, economist, columnist, and author, and active citizen, Cherotich, thank you very much for joining us this morning, and we wish you all the best as you pursue this petition.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
And
Thank
do
you.
enjoy.
Yep.
Yeah, we enjoying. Asante sana. This is a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Well, we've been talking about the Katiba and leadership, and for the next 20 minutes, we will now start looking at what exactly are the lessons that we've taken out of today's conversation. Keep it right here. Let's first look at what's happening on the roads this Friday morning, and also what's happening in the skies this Friday morning. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM. The weather with Spice FM.
Still partly cloudy in Nairobi for now. We're likely to see that those partly cloudy conditions continue through most parts of the afternoon. Highs of 26 today. 24 degrees the high in Njeri, currently at 18 degrees and partly cloudy. Nakuru is mostly sunny at 19 degrees. We'll go to a high of 26 today. Eldoret experiencing some rain showers or forecasted. So highs of 22 and lows of 12. It's mostly sunny in Kisumu at 25. It'll change later though when the skies or the heavens open up into rain. Highs of 29 and lows of 19. It's sunny conditions in Kakamega at 22. Highs of 26 and lows of 15 with showers expected later. Showers also expected to come back in Mombasa. Currently at 26 degrees going to highs of 28. Malindi now experiencing light rain showers at 27, likely to go throughout the day to highs of 28, and those showers will continue. It's partly cloudy in Kampala, 22, highs of 27 and lows of 18. Partly cloudy in Dar es Salaam, and it will turn into rain with highs of 30 and lows of 21. Let's take a look into Joburg, where it's mostly sunny at 17. It'll go to highs of 26 and cloudy conditions for the rest of the afternoon. Lagos at 30 degrees. It's a warm day, and that will be the high today, lows of 23. Paris is sunny at 15 this morning, highs of 29 and lows of 14. London, sunny skies at 12, will go to a high of 22. Beijing, mostly sunny at 27, highs of 28 and lows of 12. And finally in New York, where it's now Friday morning, it's cloudy at 20. It'll go to a high of 22 and lows of 11.
Are you ready? Okay.
Spice FM.
Traffic situation looking much better on most parts. If we're going to stay specifically in Nairobi, looking much better. Not much in terms of a hold up. Uhuru Highway, yes, we understand, still cloggy. Likely to be that way through most parts of the day and into the weekend, whereby Saturday used to be a day to chill. Expect heightened levels of traffic tomorrow. Apart from that, it's looking good, guys. Spice FMKE, that's us on Twitter, in case something does happen before we see heightened levels of traffic in the evening hours.
Spice up your life. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
It's 9:45. We still want you to call in and tell us what you pick out of today's conversations. 7 to 8 o'clock hour, we had the conversation with Njeri Thorne, the MP for Njeri Town. And then, of course, we had the conversation with the two active citizens. That is Dr. David Day and Charity Say. So, on the issue, on the matter of, trying to ring fence this key chapters of the Constitution, according to these activists, the key chapters of the Constitution, and saying, look, if you want to amend these ones, you have got to go through multiple steps. And the argument is, if you want to amend this, basically just know that you're trying to repeal this Constitution. There's merit to, on one side, to this argument, because of what we know, and even what Barry said. It's highly likely that somebody can come up and whip up the emotions of the people and tell them this is the best thing to do with the Constitution. Include a clause that is appearing to be working for the greater good of the people of the Republic of Kenya, and another clause that is obviously working for the greater good of those in power. But that is, it's all mixed up. And people go for a referendum only focusing on what has been they've been told is for the greater good of the people, without necessarily looking at what's also going to negate what we think is for the greater good of the people. And then you lose it. You end up with those amendments that change the whole principle.
When you introduced a discussion that focuses on the future, the capacity to absorb it becomes limited because it is competing with other things that have a greater immediacy. It's not that it cannot be understood. It can very easily be understood. But what relevance is it in the realm of reality that the people who are listening to it have at that moment in time?
It's true. I mean, it's backshelved when it comes to things like looking for food. It's backshelved when it comes to things like, looking for fees to send your children to school. I mean, those are the realities, and we just have to say it as it is. Whereas you may understand the importance of some of these things, it doesn't take any kind of priority in the lives of the majority of people because they're trying to stay alive.
Even if it was a petition that clearly sought only to improve the economic aspects of people's lives, again, it would still meet the same stiff competition because it would be in the future. They say, okay, fine.
It's not happening now?
We can see it, okay, but how is it going to solve this problem that I'm having now? Or how am I...
But you see, everything is usually argued from the point of there's a now and a future benefit, right? So, for instance, even when we were talking about changing the Constitution, there were some aspects of it that were, we will introduce devolution, and devolution will benefit the people. But the people will not see the benefits of devolution immediately after going to the ballot in March 2013. They'll start feeling the fruits of devolution years down the line. Same argument.
The argument that you've put across makes sense, Eric, but you see, with devolution covered a much, much larger area. One, remember, there was the political system we had and the enactment of it that many people considered repressive. So the Constitution, for many, as interpreted by them, was this will get rid of this repressive system that we have.
Immediately.
It's always immediately. Even when people talked of independence, it was assumed that all those lovely, lovely houses that you saw, the colonialists or people who represented that government occupying, the moment you have independence, they will move away and you will then move into those. The expectation has to be tempered with an element of reality in any case. The real difficulty is how to ensure that it is absorbed as it is required.
How to sell it as a
yes
today solution.
You see, something like education, do you know why for the longest time education was a very easily sellable concept? Because people had seen the benefits of it.
Absolutely.
Yes.
As in no, really, because you say put your child in school today. By the time they come out of the first term, your child knows things they did not know so you can see this is the benefit. You also see, I mean, as crazy as it sounds, you see the benefit then of when they're in school, you spend less money. And that's a benefit to a lot of people, but whichever way you want to look at it. So you could see the direct benefit of now then you didn't have to take care of this child much later on, because then they now gained the knowledge and skills to be able to then move forward and take care of themselves. So you saw a direct benefit to this action that somebody's asking you to take. In this case, unfortunately...
Which case?
Now, when you're looking at agitating for changes in the Constitution, you ask people to be actively involved. Unfortunately, people don't see the direct, immediate benefit of getting involved.
Let's pick on another caller. Lydia in Parklands. Good morning, Lydia.
Yes, thank you, Spice FM. This was a very important subject you brought up. It is only the media that can put some brains in our head by discussing these issues. It is very important. The Constitution is so important to the whole world to keep at peace. So thank you for educating us. It was I learned a lot today.
That's great.
Thank you.
I like the words peaceful constitution against mischief. So please educate us all the time. It is only the media that can educate us. We all go for elections and vote on rubbish. So if you educate us well, we can think well. And I also learned, I want to say that by chance I learned to put on my radio on my mobile phone when Honorable Martha Karua was in Parliament. And I heard she said, we passed this bill, but somebody has secretly altered it. Look at that. Then I talked about this. And then Nation discovered that when our Constitution went for printing at government printers, somebody had secretly altered it. Look at that. And then Amos Wako sent it back for printing. He's saying, not I didn't do it. And it had to go back for reprinting. See this mischief.
Yep.
So please, media, keep us educated.
Thank you very much, Lydia.
Very much.
Have a great weekend. Zachary, good morning.
Morning, guys.
Morning.
Now, because there is no time, let me just jump in by first of all telling you that I corrected the check.
Good job.
And I've gotten my command back in my house because I have now some power, money power. And I hope now you appreciate that, okay?
We do, Zachary, we do.
Yeah.
Tuma ya macho.
We'll even understand.
Nitajaribu now. There is this statement that is always found in the obituaries page, yeah? And let me somehow try to paraphrase it by saying that I'm preparing for the flight, yeah? And I'm trying to shed all the weight that sets me back, yeah? It goes something like that. And let me tell you guys, yeah? We are trying to go on a flight to change our constitution due to fit us, yeah? And we are not shedding the weight that is besetting us back. And what is this weight? It is tribalism, greed, hatred, and all these things. And let me tell you that that is why I respect Warimus. They told me that there is enough for our need, but not enough for our greed. The Constitution shall never, never, never please everyone, at a given time, But then we can try to come to a compromise. But then there are these tribal king things that actually always come back to us to remind us that, do you see Eric? He comes from this tribe. Do you see Mwarim? He comes from this tribe. And this is the agenda to finish us, okay? And ignorant as we are with the electorate, we believe in them. And therefore we find that whatever, even if Jesus sent us a constitution, some guys will still complain.
Sure.
that is our undoing.
reality.
Definitely, it is our reality. And Mr. D has correctly said that we cannot always be engaging ourselves in this cross says this cross doesn't favor me. You see, when are we going to develop? You see?
True.
That's my take, Mr. Eric. And I hope that you are going to have a nice day.
We are.
And I would wish that after we do the budget of the whatever the check contains, there will be enough to send to you. Have a nice day, guys.
That's an interesting conditionality.
Yeah.
Okay,
nice day.
Have a nice day, Zachary.
Thanks, Zachary.
Some comments on Twitter. You want to read some?
Okay, so to me, as far as I understand, the BBI is a result of the handshake with the aim of uniting Kenya, which seems not effective on the current constitution, this according to George Ajwang, and a law that is meant to unite Kenyans. Every Kenyan's view is quite important, including that of Dr. Ndi and that of Charity. At the end of the day, we have to achieve unity by looking and including everyone, though many tend to have political views, as it is politicians, they are custodians. The push and pull must be there. Just some of the things that we're hearing this morning. This one is quite long.
There's Mr. Edward Nganga. He has some doctrines there that he's put in. What's that doctrine? In the doctrine of eschatology.
Yes.
The Cain-type people and able-type people would be at loggerheads because the Cain-type people want to dominate the able-type people by force, while able-type people want justice to prevail. That's the reality we are from a spiritual perspective.
Okay.
All right, so Mystic goes on to talk about the fallacy of democracy and man is ahead and God is following behind. Can you actually do that? You can't do that in Kenya.
Looking at like the conversation we were having with the MP, and what he said, look, politicians are politicians and they will be pushing their self-interest and they'll be looking at what do you want to hear? What do you want to hear is what I'm going to tell you. And because I know that you're going to judge me by how popular I was. And my popularity is based on, did I dance to the tune that you were playing?
But Eric, consider, popularity is fickle also. So, because the fact that you're popular...
Today?
Yes. What is it? You see, now with an eye to the future, what is it that you as a politician are doing to maintain that popularity? And not in the last 2 years of your term, but throughout. And I think Mheshimiwa Mbugu pointed out, part of it is in ensuring that you fulfill the promises you made. And you, Eric, actually pointed out something important. Edit those expectations. You may think you can do certain things and you realize you can't. Tell them.
Just be honest.
Say, this I cannot possibly do.
I wanted to build Stadia. I realized I don't have land.
I'm saying this because I had a conversation with one Mheshimiwa who told me how he had been critical of the person who preceded him. He said, hey, I didn't know.
This is how it is.
Hey,
this is how the waters roll.
My goodness. That person,
ground.
I'm now in that position and the very things I was criticizing the guy for, I also can't do.
What?
Yes.
Yeah, realities change. Realities change. And it's important that, I think also it's important that as citizens we become active and start to know what exactly is it that we expect of the person that we are electing.
You see, active doesn't mean you wait for the elections. No. You participate in discussions, you participate in ensuring that the things that you know ought to be done are actually done. You raise it with these people whom are elected or who are put in positions of authority and who are available at a very local level. Raise it and continuously raise it.
Let's conclude with today's proverb.
Today's proverb. A wealthy man, person may put on an old cloth. Power has privileges. A wealthy person has power. Call it economic might, but they do. A wealthy person is the sort of person who can employ people. They can empower people. So they're given they're given a pass that an ordinary person would not be given.
You can show up wearing a raggedy T-shirt, but you have
you can show up driving a rickety vehicle or even riding an equally rickety cycle.
Or even walking.
It will be understood. In fact, the explanation will be provided
He's
for
so
you.
down to earth.
Yes. It is
Have
not
you seen how he comes even for this. He walks.
This man is
And
health
this
conscious.
man has big vehicles he's left at home.
He's health conscious. Look at him riding a bicycle. He hasn't even thrown away the old bicycle that he had.
Yeah. Thank you very much for tuning into the Situation Room this week. Join us again next week, Monday to Friday, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. And from next week, we will be live on KTN Home Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday from 7 to 9, but also on radio from 6 to 10. Say goodbye, Nduh.
Goodbye. Have a good weekend.
Right.
And let's keep the conversations going.
Indeed. Good morning. It's now 10 o'clock.